The lady with golden hair suddenly exclaims, claiming that she is the bride of His Majesty himself. She insists that the only one who can claim this title is Scarlet Armand. The young lady looks up at the man standing before her and recognizes him as Emperor Carlier. But instead of answering, he calmly brings the blade to her throat. With tears in her eyes, the girl begs His Highness for love, but at that very moment, he takes her life. This world belongs to the novel The Private Life of a Tyrant, where Emperor Carlier is a hero known for his cruelty and for putting his brothers into eternal sleep. However, after meeting the main character, he changes, becoming caring and gentle only around her. The advisors hid the tyrant's personal relationships, and now the heroine wonders why all this is necessary if the cruel ruler suddenly becomes kind. She realizes that she is 20 years old, and it seems that she herself has found herself in an eternal sleep, just like the previous heroine of the novel. Now her consciousness lives in the body of Scarlet Armand, the bride of the tyrant himself. She loved him madly, humiliated the main character, and later died at the hands of the emperor. That was the story. But now the blonde is trying to remember what happened between their meeting and her tragic end. And suddenly she realizes that she is lucky to be here before the main plotline begins, while her fate has not yet been decided. Scarlet started bullying Shirla when the plot began, so to survive, she can't be angered. But how to deal with the tyrant is another matter. The girl takes a notebook from the dresser and learns that the tyrant fell in love for the first time, and it turned out to be a disaster for him. He was a genius, a master swordsman, wise but incapable of human warmth. At this moment, a maid enters the room and asks if the girl is interested in why His Majesty is considered the wisest of men. Then the woman sighs wearily, citing her busy schedule, but the heroine understands she's heard everything. The maid adds that few can match the emperor's knowledge. The girl realizes that this is the reason why he is called wise, but she also remembers her family, which is too strict and cold. She is haunted by the question, how could they marry their daughter off to a monster, no matter how noble he may seem? Therefore, the blonde begins to doubt whether this family is really her own. After being reborn in Scarlet's body, she retained the memory of her former self, and this became her salvation. She remembered that the Duke, her father, treated her coldly. Once, he slapped her on the cheek, after which he ordered them to sit in place until the morning. The young lady realized that no matter how much he punished her, she only felt sad and endured. At balls, the Duke kept a close eye on her, but on ordinary days he seemed not to notice her. Her memories of her family were far from warm. Nothing but severity and indifference. Therefore, the girl decided that she needed to escape from the Duke's house. But first, she needed to sort out other matters. Her gaze falls on the letter lying on the desk. It mentioned the engagement to the tyrant and the emperor's approaching birthday in just 10 days. This should be their first meeting as bride and groom. And, in essence, the beginning of the story itself, the moment when Scarlet fell in love and doomed herself. The girl looks at another sheet and understands that she must remember everything about the tyrant. Why Scarlet could love him, because she herself finds him disgusting. She recalls that it is the appearance of the main character that leads Scarlet to eternal sleep. So I need to run away, but the engagement has already taken place, and there is no money for an escape. Then she considers whether she should ask to break off the engagement directly. But he understands that this will provoke the Emperor's anger. He will consider himself insulted. And if everything goes Scarlet's way, her fate will be repeated down to the smallest details. It's better to be rejected than to end up in eternal sleep. Then she decides, let him reject her himself. After all, the engagement with the Emperor is secured by a magical contract. It can only be broken by mutual consent or by one of the parties entering into eternal sleep. So we need to persuade him to agree. That's what the contract says. They will have to meet several times, and no matter how arrogant the Emperor is, the girl can only pretend to be submissive. Now the girl realizes that there are countless ways to make a guy feel disgusted with herself. She decides to pretend to be crazy and just wait until he decides to end it himself. But while she is laughing hysterically, There is suddenly an insistent knock on the door. It turns out to be the maid who heard her mistress's strange laughter. She notices that Miss has been crying and laughing for a long time now, so she anxiously asks if everything is okay with her. Meanwhile, in the back of the former Scarlet's mind, the thought is that this does not change the fact that His Majesty will approve of the person. But the main character just laughs, not understanding why this amuses her, although it should make her angry. She wonders why the Emperor appears so kind in Scarlet's memories. At this time, the maid cautiously inquires if everything is all right with her mistress. Scarlet answers in the affirmative and then realizes that she was scared for nothing. After all, it's only Lucy, her only servant. Lucy says that she will bring the dress now, and the heroine quietly agrees, wondering where she will go after the broken engagement. When the young lady leaves for the countryside, her maid will inevitably whisper that if she continues like this, the family's reputation will suffer. The lady herself is thinking about the evening banquet and doesn't understand the need to prepare in the middle of the day. She looks at her reflection in the mirror and thinks that this body is amazingly beautiful. The maid approaches from behind, noticing her mistress examining the dress, and tries to take a closer look. The heroine is slightly startled and blushes. After this, the girl carefully examines the dress. She touches the soft fabric, and the maid asks if the mistress would like to choose something more elegant. The young lady waves it off and says that this is exactly what she will wear. Lucy is puzzled as to what is being discussed, but the lady confirms her choice with a slight smile. The maid still has doubts. Isn't the dress too simple? But the mistress replies that with jewelry, it will look beautiful. Then Lucy asks if the lady will go to the banquet at the imperial palace in such an outfit. And after some time, the girl actually does this, causing shock among those around her, who decide that she has gone crazy. Scarlet just smirks, finding this reaction entirely expected. She's confident that even in a simple outfit she looks dazzling, as the peach hue suits her incredibly well. She decides to wait and see how His Highness reacts. The young lady looks at Lucy with interest and asks if she is pleased with herself, because the maid really worked hard. The main character notices another maid off to the side. She sternly asks why she didn't say hello. The woman, frightened, apologizes and promises not to do it again. At that moment, someone announces Lady Scarlet's arrival. One of the maids asks to be allowed to serve, but upon seeing her mistress's dress, she cannot hide her surprise. The main character realizes that her outfit looks too simple for a banquet in honor of the Emperor's birthday. However, it was from this moment that her little madness began. She even thought that perhaps she only looked so respectable because she came from a wealthy family. Later, sitting among the aristocrats, the girl feels a heavy and tense atmosphere. The young lady's father glares at her, and she wonders why he's staring at her like that. This is the same duke who always treated his daughter like a nobody, and repeatedly raised his hand against her. But now the girl is wondering if she should be afraid of this worthless man, and decides to simply ignore him. Soon someone approaches her. This is Scarlet's half-brother named Isar, the one who was the only one who supported her when she was sentenced to eternal sleep. When the girl was almost killed, he found her and saved her. It was then that the heroine woke up in Scarlet's body. Opening her eyes, she looked at her hands, not understanding what had happened to her. Then the young lady turned her gaze to the side, looking around the room. Meanwhile, the doctor told his brother that the danger had passed, but the lady needed to be watched. The girl then asked, barely audibly, who this man was. However, the guy answered her with irritation, not understanding why she was speaking in such a strange tone. However, he calmed his ardor and allowed himself to retreat a little after what happened. Scarlet watched him silently for a moment, sighing deeply and realizing he was likely worried about his sister. Memories of Isar's kindness to her resurfaced with particular warmth. The main character felt the strangeness of what was happening and tried to understand whether she should treat him differently, but at the same time she was worried by the expression on his face, which seemed frightening and incomprehensible. Soon the young lady decided to find out what had happened and what was behind his behavior. The guy responded with his own question, trying to figure out if she had noticed that her dress was attracting attention and why it might be unusual. However, Scarlet interrupted him mentally, wondering how anyone could doubt her beauty, since, in her opinion, she looked beautiful in any outfit. He was only slightly surprised and quietly remarked that there were rumors that she had gone crazy, which caused the girl a slight bewilderment. And apparently there was a grain of truth in these rumors that hung quietly in the air, haunting her. Meanwhile, he immediately fell silent, as if realizing that he had said too much and could be misunderstood. He decided that it was better not to continue the conversation and to remain silent for the time being so as not to harm the situation. Scarlet, watching him, tried to understand what had happened and why he was behaving so strangely and unusually. She also wondered if he was being overly cautious with his words, and realized that she had never had a conversation like this before. Suddenly, the father slammed his hand on the carriage and called out loudly, as if demanding immediate attention and an explanation. He furiously asked her if she was embarrassed that she was disgracing the family with her actions, demanding that she immediately stop her behavior. The father also ordered his daughter to leave the carriage if she did not stop her actions, and Scarlet realized that she had been anticipating this outburst of anger for a long time. She firmly stated that she did not consider her actions shameful and was indignant that it was all because of the dress, since the day before she had bought a lot of outfits, and today she chose a simpler dress. And if we're talking about the family's prestige, it would be better to discuss the behavior of her brother, who returned home drunk yesterday and attracted attention. Rumors were already circulating in the capital about how he sang on the streets, attracting the attention of passers-by and creating a buzz around himself. So Scarlet wondered why anyone cared less about the family's reputation than about her own actions. The main character realized that her father would be very upset, and she understood that she had never answered so openly before, but if a man can only talk, it is not worth getting into an argument with him. After this, the girl turned her gaze to her brother, trying to catch his reaction and understand what to expect next. However, he only looked at her in surprise, and Scarlet realized that her fears were in vain. He was not going to be angry with her for such behavior. The man remained completely calm, which surprised the young lady and made her think about his true feelings. At this time, he tried to turn to Scarlet, as if trying to explain something, but the words stuck on his lips. The girl's stepmother, meanwhile, asked both of them to stop this misunderstanding, realizing that the situation was becoming too stupid and tense. This woman is Duchess Melia Armand, a romantic nature who was once abandoned by another duke before his wedding, and after the death of the duke's first wife, brought her into the family. During their engagement, they had a son, Isar Armin, Scarlet's eldest, and it seems Melia did not feel much sympathy for the girl, as she became a living reminder of the past betrayal. Scarlet reflected and understood a lot about the woman's behavior, remembering how she once asked her stepmother to forgive her for her mistakes and promise not to repeat them again. However, the Duchess only insisted that the girl be locked up until she came to her senses and calmed down completely. So the young lady was left alone in the dark room, realizing that taking out all the anger on her was unfair, although it was difficult to accept. The brunette approached her and quietly reminded her to allow the Duke to speak and explain his thoughts without disturbing him. Scarlet agreed, realizing that she should be patient and listen to the man before jumping to conclusions. She wondered if the rumors were true, that he had sung in the square while drunk, causing surprise and interest among those around him. The woman only looked sternly at the young lady, as if warning her about the possible consequences of these words. Scarlet, however, decided internally that everyone should keep an eye on their son, and noted that rumors came and went, repeating themselves almost every day. After this, the girl also addressed the woman with respect, using the title of Madam, and was slightly surprised by the reaction to this address. Scarlet decided that there was no point in worrying about Madame's opinion, and internally noted that she would not call her mother unless Madame herself wanted it. Melia looked down, realizing that it would be better for everyone if the woman called off her wedding, calling her crazy, although it would take time. The young lady, realizing this, decided that before getting involved in an argument again, she needed to rest a little and gain strength. At that very moment, she began to snore quietly, which surprised the rest of the family, because she fell asleep literally instantly. Isar looked at his sister with curiosity, amazed at how quickly she fell asleep. Then he tried to hold back his laughter as he looked at Milia's peaceful face, almost forgetting about all his other worries. In her dream, the girl heard someone crying, quiet and plaintive, penetrating to the depths of her soul. And soon she realized that it was she who was crying, as if her own soul was speaking through her tears. Looking at the reflection of the girl being decapitated, the young lady felt a strange surprise and incomprehension of what was happening. At that moment, Milia woke up, finding herself on the cold floor, and realized that it had all been just a dream. The girl thought that it seemed that she really had been sleeping soundly, but fortunately it was not too late, and no one had disturbed her rest. Scarlet ran her hand over her neck and felt a twinge of anxiety, realizing that the dream could mean something, but she quickly pushed those thoughts away, choosing to focus on reality. The young lady looked up and saw before her a majestic palace that was striking in its beauty and scale. She realized that the time had come to meet her tyrant fiancé and find out what he had in store for her. As she approached the door where the guard stood, Scarlet felt a slight sense of unease. When the guard looked at her, all agitated, he was slightly surprised by her sudden determination. Maintaining her dignity, Scarlet seemed to assess the situation and mentally ask if she was late, after which she indicated that the door should be opened. The guard just shook his head, explaining that he could not open the door. His Majesty is already inside, and therefore the lady's name cannot be announced, which made the main character think about an emergency exit. The girl decided that this was not a problem, and, smiling to herself, she realized that she would have to anger His Highness in order to go further. She walked inside carefully, without losing her confidence and determination, and felt the full majesty of the palace. Scarlet's gaze took in the luxurious interiors, decorated with exquisite details and gold elements. The girl was amazed at how majestic everything around looked, as if the very atmosphere of the palace was breathtaking. She remembered that the tyrant had said that his birthday would be more modest than that of the previous emperor, and she wondered what the previous holiday had been like. The young lady continued to walk forward, trying to figure out where her tyrant fiancé was hiding among the many guests. It was not easy to walk because everyone around was watching her with interest and curiosity. One of the women whispered to the other that she had noticed the girl and was surprised by her outfit, which was clearly attracting attention. The blonde immediately realized that her appearance had indeed aroused the interest of those around her. The young lady noticed another young man who looked attractive, and she wondered if he was her emperor. She tried to get a better look at him, wondering if it was the blonde man in front of her. But in the book, the emperor is described as silver-haired with purple eyes, and it was definitely not him. Scarlet looked around, trying to figure out where her emperor could be, but the crowd of people made it difficult for her to get her bearings. At this time, she heard someone advising Lady Fleet to be careful. They say that the Armanov's daughter has gone mad, and now the rumors are beginning to seem true. The main character noted that there was a certain similarity with the behavior of these people. She watched them closely, trying to catch every movement and reaction. Milia even thought that they resembled a traffic light, and this seemed strange to her, but in a funny way reflected their behavior. The women discussed her words, wondering what she meant by the traffic light. The green-haired lady claimed that the rumors were true, and that the girl was indeed saying something nonsensical. Scarlet walked up to the woman and mentally expressed her irritation, wishing that she would not bother her and leave her alone. The blonde responded by noting that the girl was having a dialogue with herself. Then she hurried away, admitting that Milia was morally stronger than her, although now she felt vulnerable. Scarlet continued moving forward, noticing the huge number of people around her. No one came close to each other. Everyone seemed to be trying to avoid contact, keeping their distance. The lady thought that perhaps it was connected with the bad reputation that had been following her for more than a month. She came here to see only one person, and in the book her feelings were unexpectedly tied to the politeness of a tyrant. But in reality, the main reason was that he was a perfect match for her in terms of character and presence, which attracted her the most. Because he was the only tyrant in her life who left an indelible mark on her heart. Now Scarlet wonders if she was really that naive, because falling in love so deeply could have been dangerous. At that moment, the girl hears someone say that it is Lady Armand, about whom there are rumors that she has gone crazy. The young lady wonders who else could argue so loudly and decides to look at the speaker's face. but turning around, she sees the same emperor, known as a ruthless tyrant. Slightly surprised, she realizes that Scarlet needs to be honest with herself and with him. The young lady bows and introduces herself as Scarlet Armand of the noble Armand family. She also greets His Majesty, while reflecting that the previous Scarlet probably fell in love not only with his manners, but also with his appearance. The emperor is indeed handsome, young and smart, capable of surprising those around him, but the girl realizes that she must not succumb to his charm. Meanwhile, the emperor asks what is going on, and the young lady realizes that she needs to concentrate. Looking at his face, she reflects on how difficult it is to remain indifferent to a man with such power. Is it possible to be a tyrant and yet charm people so easily? She understands why he is so powerful. Slapping herself on the cheeks, the girl decides to stop these thoughts because she didn't come here for entertainment. Scarlet replies to His Majesty that she sees him for the first time and admits that she cannot cope with admiration. She asks permission to ask a question and mentions that she heard about the emperor's love for the unusual, then asks if this is true. He states that there is no need to show any strangeness, and the girl notices indifference on his face. However, she says that she is meeting him for the first time as a future bride and has prepared something for him. Scarlet asks if he would like to see it, expressing hope that he will be interested. The emperor agrees, briefly answering, "Good." He adds that he wouldn't be surprised if it were poetry, but the girl reassures herself and decides to see how long his indifference will last. Then the young lady takes a glass of wine in her hands. She asks the emperor to watch, because with the help of magic she is going to dye the dress a dazzling red color. As she pours the wine, she congratulates His Majesty on his birthday, adding solemnity to the moment. The emperor watches the girl closely, not hiding his interest. Scarlet notes that the aroma of the wine is indeed pleasant, and this adds to the effectiveness of her action. She demonstrates how the dress changes color to bright red, wondering how he will react to such madness. Everyone around starts whispering, surprised that the girl would spill wine in front of the emperor. The main character thinks it will be difficult to marry such a bold woman. Scarlet asks His Majesty if it really looks impressive. The man is surprised and doesn't know what to say, and she watches the expression on his face, thinking that if everything works out, she can ruin the engagement with one move. The young lady recalls that Emperor Carlier told Shirla the day before that no one would congratulate him. These words, which sounded almost like a lie, concealed deep inner experiences. The guy also asked her not to congratulate him, and this increases the tension in her thoughts. The young lady felt that in a normal situation he would probably want to hear this from the main character, but now she felt that he might not like her words, and so Scarlet had a slight smile on her face. She congratulates Her Majesty on her birthday, trying to look natural and friendly. Everyone present in the hall is slightly surprised, and notes that the emperor usually has a gloomy expression on his face, and the girl understands that with this behavior, she has completely ruined the first impression. At this time, the emperor turns his attention to Duke Armand, and he immediately heads towards him. The guy, meanwhile, expresses concern, claiming that the girl is clearly not feeling well, and wonders why she didn't stay home in such a state. The people behind them involuntarily begin to whisper and quietly laugh, watching the scene. After this, the man states that he will immediately take the girl back to a safe place. The young lady is slightly surprised by such determination, but realizes that the guy still continues to look at her, as if he is ready to plunge her into eternal sleep with his gaze. However, she notices that he is indeed handsome, and realizes that their flower idol has encountered something unusual and crazy for the first time. After this, Scarlet understands that if everything went the way she wanted, then it can be considered a success. However, she is not sure whether she will be able to break off the engagement right away, and therefore decides to blow the guy a light kiss. The guy seems to bounce off him, which causes the girl to be quietly surprised. The young lady reflects that this is not the end yet, and let His Highness wait a little before deciding anything. After a while, Scarlet goes home in a carriage, enjoying a quiet moment after all the events. Her father bangs his fist on the carriage and screams, calling his daughter crazy. It's not just irritation, because when they return, The girl will clearly be in trouble, and Scarlet thinks about how noisy everything was around. But she considers this response a success of sorts, as her plan worked better than expected. At this moment, the young lady's brother turns to her and asks if she is drunk. He notes that she smells, and the girl thinks to herself that this angry child just can't hold back his words. The young lady calmly asks if it is not beautiful because red suits her and makes her look bright. Then she slowly approaches her brother, and he presses himself more and more against the wall of the carriage, trying to keep his distance. But then Armand approaches Scarlet, and it turns out that it is her stepmother, who was watching what was happening. The woman says that when they return, she will call a counselor to deal with her behavior. The main character is perplexed as to why this is necessary. The stepmother explains that, judging by her actions, she needs to find a doctor who will put the girl's brains back in place. Scarlet is shocked at first, but secretly she is happy because this means that the engagement can be broken off and she can lose her title without regret. The young lady also adds that she had heard of His Majesty's passion for the red liquid, and, being his bride, she wanted to give him a special gift. Scarlet realizes that the final stage of her plan is approaching, and she makes an innocent, feigned, affectionate look. The young lady's brother is a little surprised by her behavior and facial expression. He wonders in bewilderment what she is so afraid of, and why she is acting so strangely. The young lady declares that she wishes to be dressed entirely in red and to be in the arms of His Majesty. She is determined to be by his side, even in this crazy moment. The brunette asks her if she isn't afraid of falling into eternal sleep, and the girl firmly replies that she will never allow that. At this moment, they both feel unity in their thoughts, despite the strangeness of the situation. The guy asks what she's even talking about. The young lady replies that, from then on, she will collect strands of his hair every time they meet, and each strand will become a symbol of happiness for her, which she will keep on her pillow until the wedding. The guy is slightly shocked and thinks that she has really gone crazy. But he remains silent, and Scarlet reflects that perhaps she has managed to turn the situation around and decides that it is better this way. Izar turns to his sister and asserts that it doesn't matter what she thinks, the main thing is order. After some time, they are already approaching the duchy, and the atmosphere becomes tense. One of the servants is puzzled why they returned so early, and suspects new adventures of Lady Scarlet. He thinks that perhaps the girl has gotten into some kind of trouble again. The guy approaches the carriage and is about to open the door, noting that the last month has passed peacefully. Suddenly, the lady kicks down the door, surprising everyone around her with her abruptness. The guy is shocked and can't believe that it's really a girl's leg. The stepmother screams, ordering that Scarlet be stopped immediately and caught. Seeing that the girl was already far away, the woman sighed and ordered the advisor to be called, fearing for her health. The young man is perplexed, because the lady just ran out and this seems impossible. He asks if the gentleman should not have accompanied them to avoid such a situation. The woman only remembers what happened and tries to understand how everything happened so unexpectedly. The brunette claimed that no matter how much he tried to analyze the situation, the girl behaved as if she had lost her mind, and what would happen if she really fell into eternal sleep. He felt a deep aversion to the funeral, and at that moment his stepmother demanded an explanation, not understanding what was happening. The main character then made it clear to him that he needed to leave the room immediately. When the young man found himself on the street, she again expressed the thought that he would have to get home on his own. The guy was in shock, not believing that he had really been left without support and protection. The man, seeing what was happening, turned to Scarlet Armand and asked about the meaning of what was happening. The girl came closer to him and made it clear that she was now officially His Majesty's bride, and it was better to keep her distance. After this, the young lady asks him whether he understood the meaning of these words and the seriousness of the situation. The sun was at its zenith over Carlier that day, blinding with its light. The moon, clear water, flowering plants, majestic trees and birds filled the street with their beauty. The main character wrote the letter, thinking that in order to fix all the problems, they needed to meet in person. Scarlet hoped that their situation would develop calmly until the engagement was finally broken. They had to agree on the exact date and time of the upcoming meeting so that everything went as planned. The girl understood that the emperor and his bride were obliged to meet a certain number of times a month, and each meeting was recorded as if it were an official public relationship. She also tried not to be intrusive and gave His Majesty the opportunity to choose the place and time of the meeting. Scarlet thought that a display of modesty with a touch of madness would help deceive the distrustful ruler and create the desired impression. Now she lived in anticipation of an answer. If the schedule arrived, it would mean she had missed something yesterday. The girl turned to Lucy, asking if she was nearby, and the maid confirmed her presence. The main character asked the maid to bring the ledger book, realizing that the late Duchess had left it for Scarlet Armand. She realized that the book's contents implied that Scarlet had been secretly humiliating Shirla, which revealed past intrigues. The girl understood that she had spent all her money and was forced to borrow a large sum of money from her parents. The maid served Scarlet tea and asked if she had prepared anything tasty, showing concern. The young lady thanked Lucy for her attention and help. The maid was slightly surprised by such attention and expressions of gratitude. However, she soon replied that she had not prepared anything special, and Scarlet, looking at her face, found it funny and continued to thank her. Scarlet expressed her gratitude again, to which Lucy simply nodded in agreement. The maid left it clear that she was always ready to help if needed. The main character agreed and said goodbye to Lucy, feeling relieved. Then she leaned on her hand, thinking about the importance of sorting out the ledger. Looking at the gold coins, Scarlet realized that there were very few of them, and with such capital, she would not be able to leave the duchy and gain independence. She noticed that there was some money left from Scarlet's savings, but it would not be enough to act freely. Luckily, she had ways to multiply the small amount and make a fortune. The young lady thought about the safe zone and realized that this wasteland called the Cradle had potential, despite its apparent abandonment. The lands were abandoned because magic didn't work there, but who could have predicted all the consequences? In these lands, all settlements that interacted with the main character were rejected, but in the safe zone, one could find a stable income. With a smile on her face, Scarlet understood that there were fairies here, and their recognition would open up new possibilities. This meant access to the most valuable treasure, the fairy stone, the possession of which brought unimaginable wealth. The girl thought that selling the stone would ensure significant wealth and independence. Deciding to take action, she opened the door, and the maid asked in surprise where Scarlet was going. The main character said that she was going to the bank because she needed money to implement her plans. At this time, His Highness was in his room, deep in thought. The guy took off his jacket, feeling tired, and slowly lay down on the bed. He remembered how the girl had congratulated His Majesty on his birthday, standing before him with extraordinary confidence. The young man noted that her lack of fear was both striking and impressive. The boy recalled how someone called her the sinister child of Carlier, and that this name caused fear in those around her. People said that it would have been better if he had never been born, and the grown-up youth understood that he had to be careful with his words before His Majesty, otherwise the consequences could be fatal. He thought he knew himself well, but the events of that day showed that this was not so. As he rose from his bed, he felt unwell and weak, aware of the stress of the day. He remembered again how the young lady had blown him a kiss, leaving a pleasant and warm impression. But he soon realizes that he's experiencing more of an inner sense of filth. The thought of Scarlet Armand makes him realize that the only thing worth paying attention to is her famous last name, even if the girl herself sometimes seems stupid. She belongs to a noble family whose influence cannot be ignored, so the young man decides to keep the engagement despite all doubts. At this time, one of the servants informs His Highness that they have all found out and come to the conclusion that the daughter of the Armands is cruel and knows no mercy. He also wonders whether such a girl is truly capable of becoming an empress worthy of the throne. The young man then looks closely at the paper and thinks, perhaps she really is as merciless as they claim. Then he becomes lost in thoughts of Scarlet, wondering if everything they say about her is truly true. He realizes it's difficult to know her true nature, as she's been judged only by her public demeanor. She may be insane enough to be executed, but he feels like she hasn't completely lost her mind. The young man decides whether he should wait and observe further events without jumping to conclusions. After some time, the maid approaches the mist to report the news. She reports that a response has arrived from the imperial palace, and now the situation has become a little clearer. The main character, with a slight smile, understands that it would be wonderful for her to receive a letter that would mean the end of the engagement. However, a schedule for the month appears before the girl's eyes, and she realizes that this is a schedule sent to her by the young man himself. This means she will have to show him something similar so that he will feel a spark of real madness in her behavior. Soon, the emperor is sitting in his office and carefully studying some documents, delving into the details. At this moment, someone knocks on the door and addresses His Majesty, reporting his arrival as ordered. The servant states that he must convey certain information that he considers important to the emperor. The young man places a stack of papers on the table and explains that numerous events have occurred this morning that require attention. His Majesty asks how exactly this should be understood. The servant briefly replies that the explanations will be short, and the main thing is the essence of what happened. This young man is Carlotter's advisor and also Count Clover, possessing influence and knowledge. The green-haired youth notes that the emperor has already had breakfast, so it's time to get to work. He also notes that some people can work with little rest and barely any sleep. Carlier ponders, realizing what the young advisor is hinting at, and prepares for the possible consequences. Looking into the crystal ball, he wonders if this man is really Count Lumen, who commands intelligence among Carlotter's close advisors. The conversation with Count Lumen hints at possible serious events, although the young man is still inclined to doubt their reality. His Majesty limits himself to ordering that the information received be checked again, without jumping to hasty conclusions. A young advisor with green hair observes what is happening and realizes the complexity of the situation. It seems that Count Lumen could burst into tears now, observing the circumstances, and the blonde man only states that his report was interrupted. The advisor understands that if the investigation concerns the Armand family, everything becomes clear. The ancestors of these families were the founders of the Carlier and Risabel families. Their heroic ancestors left the Armands a legacy that even the Tyrant's most experienced advisor would struggle to cope with. Scarlett enjoys long walks, and this is likely reflected in her report, highlighting a character trait of hers. The Emperor notes there's no need to rush and wonders if they've done their due diligence. The advisor is worried about the problems, as Count Lumen is in tears, and if something happens to him again. At this moment, the connection suddenly breaks, leaving everyone in suspense. The fair-haired youth tries to contact the Emperor again, hoping to re-establish contact. The green-haired advisor understands that such a simple failure will result in additional overtime work. At this time, His Majesty again turns to his advisor and announces an order requiring immediate action. He orders everyone to find out everything about the Armand family and Scarlett Armand personally. The young man with green hair realizes that this girl became the Emperor's bride just a few weeks ago, and now attention to her is of the utmost importance. He still considers it better than attempting the impossible, after which he considers that it might not be easy, but he's interested in learning more about the young lady. The guy merely reminds him not to overlook any unpleasant details he'd like to know beforehand. The advisor agrees and promises to do everything in his power, while understanding that it will be quite easy to gather information about Armand's family. The guy asks if His Majesty is ready to share his official schedule, because, according to the rules, he must meet with the girl twice a month. The green-haired boy claims that having a schedule will help him better organize the collection of information, as it will simplify the process. At this time, His Majesty declares that he wants to see the girl again, showing how dear these meetings are to him. With a slight smile on his face, the Emperor confirms that the meeting will certainly take place, creating a feeling of unexpected joy. He then notes that there is no schedule yet, so it is better for the advisor to send a letter with the information himself. The green-haired boy agrees and confirms that he will do this at least once a month, realizing that this is the best option. As he climbs the stairs, the guy reflects on how the circumstances developed and why everything happened this way. He wonders if the Emperor is truly happy, as it is rare to see such an expression of joy on his face, and he begins to wonder what it was about this young lady that captivated him. The guy imagines the girl holding the emperor in her arms and thinks that she is laying claim to the sun of this country, captivating his imagination. With horror, he realizes that he will never allow something like this to happen, because his sense of duty and caution take over. He decides to find out everything about Scarlet Armand soon, while the main character, looking at the letter, understands that the meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. The letter also says that the Emperor promises to meet Lady Armand the next day, and the girl wonders whether he will come on foot. She is trying to understand what kind of walk is planned and whether this is a sign of indifference or a quick end to the meeting. The young lady is pondering what to wear, because the last red dress made a strong impression, and she shouldn't choose anything weaker so as not to disappoint. The girl understands that if the gifts were prepared sincerely, there is a risk that the tyrant will not like them at all, which makes her worry. Then the lady comes up with a clever idea and smirks, realizing that she cannot go visiting empty-handed, thinking up a suitable gift. After a while, she finds herself on a shopping street and admires her outfit, realizing that she looked so special because the street is located next to the palace. The girl realizes that on this street, it is easy to find everything she needs for a gift, because the selection here is huge. She finds grapefruit and white flowers, the very things the tyrant particularly dislikes, although the reason is unknown, which adds to the intrigue. The young lady sniffs one of the flowers, finding the scent pleasant, and decides that the bouquet would be a suitable gift. She approaches the salesperson and asks for something white with a rich aroma to create a stunning gift. Soon the girl receives a bouquet, and the seller assures her chosen one that these flowers will definitely please her beloved. With a smile, the main character realizes that the result will most likely be the opposite of what was expected, adding to the intrigue. She realizes that everything is ready, and it is time to go. But at the same time, she thinks whether it would be right to appear like this, and she ponders the Emperor's reaction. Soon someone approaches Lady Armand, informing her that she is 2 hours and 30 minutes late, causing slight confusion. The girl explains that she was delayed due to force majeure, and the advisor simply nods, accepting the excuse without asking any further questions. Since this was the last item on the schedule, there was plenty of time, and the guy claimed to be in charge of setting the schedule and asked to be called Clover. Lady Armand found it a pleasure to meet him. He reminds her that His Majesty is expecting her, so he advises her not to delay. The girl understands that, just like in the book, he is a workaholic, and they hadn't met at their last meeting. After some time, the young lady enters the building and wonders if this is really a prison, because the atmosphere seems gloomy and strict. The young man with green hair notices that the lady has excellent eyesight, and although she is in the palace for the first time, she already knows her way around well, showing observantness. The blonde agrees with his remark, acknowledging the correctness of his words and his observation. They laugh together with a slight sadness, and the lady wonders if he really wants to be alone with her, creating tension between them. She also wonders if Clover thinks she doesn't know him, which adds a touch of intrigue to their interaction. The tyrant's personal life includes not only the main characters, but also advisors who observe all his actions and sometimes lightly joke about him. The girl approaches the advisor, who inquires about what the young lady is doing, observing her actions and facial expression. The girl just spat on the glasses with contempt and thought that she urgently needed to meet with His Highness without putting things off. After that, with a slight smile, she checked if everything was okay with him, carefully watching his reaction. Scarlet noticed that the young man looked as if he had been through a real disaster, but he insisted that everything was fine. The main character carefully handed him a rag and wiped his glasses, trying to make the situation easier for him. At the same time, she wondered why he was so wary, since, in her opinion, everything around was calm. She also wondered who was capable of speaking with such sarcasm at a first meeting. A scrap of fabric that happened to be at hand turned out to be extremely useful and helped her in this situation. At that moment, someone asked what they were doing, and it turned out to be His Highness. He noted that the guy was simply messing around right under her nose. And indeed, they seemed to be dragging their feet, pretending to be busy with something important right before his eyes. The main character addressed His Majesty with respect and, bowing slightly, expressed her joy at the meeting. The guy looked at Lady Armand and noted that she had arrived, to which the girl nodded in response, confirming her intentions. She explained that she wanted to be at the meeting with His Majesty as soon as possible, without wasting a minute. The young man noticed with interest the basket that the girl brought and asked what was in it. Lady Armand replied that it was a gift, because she had come to see His Majesty, and it seemed wrong to her to come empty-handed. The girl carefully took out the bouquet and asked if the white flowers seemed beautiful, hoping to evoke a smile. She also handed him a piece of fruit, and the young man asked in surprise if it was a grapefruit. The blonde confirmed with a smile and added that the fruit was beautiful because she loved grapefruits and chose it specifically. Then the girl thought that one only had to look at His Majesty's face to understand his mood. Lady Armand explained that these were wild grapefruits from the lands of the Gyarus, a rare item used by light mages, and were likely very tasty. His Majesty turned to Clover, noting that he looked tired, but the boy only told him not to pay attention to it. The Emperor suggested that the boy take a little rest, and he himself decided to keep the young lady company and spend time with her. The green-haired youth agreed and immediately left, leaving the girl alone with the Emperor. The Emperor announced that he would give the girl a tour, and the young lady was at a loss as to how to respond to such an invitation. As they climbed the stairs, the girl noticed that they had been silent since they met and wondered whether she should say anything. She turned to His Majesty with a question about why he ordered the lanterns to be extinguished, hinting that now her radiance seemed brighter than before. The boy remarked that he was busy with work, and the girl, surprised, asked what he was talking about. The Emperor explained that he was busy with things that couldn't be scheduled. He looked at the main character, asking about her facial expression, and the girl shyly replied that she was hot, which slightly irritated the guy. He turned around, and the young lady quickly explained that she was just joking and offered to help him with his work to rectify the situation. The young man smiled and asked if she was truly willing to help, to which she confirmed that she was. Otherwise, why choose such a time and place? She also clarified the matter, asking His Majesty to explain. The guy admitted that he invited her on business to discuss important issues, and the girl noted that she was the best at conversation. However, when he opened the door, the girl was surprised and wondered what was behind it. When the Emperor turned to face her, the young lady fell silent, unsure how to react. The guy looked away again, and the main character, sticking her tongue out at him, thought about his insolence, but then thought about how huge the dungeon was in front of them and who she might meet there. As the young lady watched the people trapped in the cage, she felt that this guy had clearly lost his mind and decided that it was best to avoid eye contact with everyone around him. Suddenly she heard someone shouting for her to come over, and heard an apology, and then a request for help addressed specifically to her. Scarlet went to the man without hesitation, wondering if there was any way she could ease his situation and save him from his troubles. But at that very moment, someone grabbed her by the hand, shouting at her not to go anywhere and to listen to his story, because, in essence, it was kind. The main character insisted on being let go and asked what was going on, while feeling that it was causing her pain. At this moment, the Tyrant himself addressed the lady, warning her to be careful with her hands and not to act rashly. The guy made one sharp gesture, and Scarlet's hand was freed. She immediately realized that this was a completely different person from the one she had known before. At this time, the young man was wiping the liquid from his face, and the girl could not help but think that he had clearly gone crazy. Scarlet looked at her hand lying on the floor as His Highness stepped on it, claiming that the Chancellor would now have more work to do. Then the boy suggested they continue on their way, and the girl thought he was truly crazy. The Emperor said the lady should meet a man far away, and she agreed, trying to figure out what kind of meeting awaited her. Scarlet looked at his satisfied face again and wondered if the Tyrant in the book was the same. She also noticed the rotten grapefruits and thought that even before meeting her, he continued to act strangely. He seemed completely out of his mind, and the lady could not help wishing to give him a light slap on the back of the head. Scarlet had already taken aim, but the Emperor asked her to wait, and she wondered what he was doing, whether he was reading minds. When he turned around, the girl began to stretch her body, claiming that it was useful to do exercises before a long walk. At this time, someone reported that there were two possible paths and one of them was approaching, determining the most likely direction. It turned out to be a sweet old woman who said Cece had told her so. The man turned to the flower, expressing his love, noticing how sweetly Cece whispered. The main character approached the woman, asking if she was all right. The emperor, however, realized that he was dealing with a seer who had been silently imprisoned for 19 months, and the old woman's prophecies about the Armans could not be ignored. The woman asked him to protect the old man from bandits, and, in exchange, offered to tell her a prophecy. The man pointed out that there were two paths, and one of them would be more likely. But this path led to destruction, depriving them of even the slightest joy and the opportunity to enjoy happiness. The silver-haired youth realized that, apart from the temples that could predict the future, sleeping fortune-tellers were only found among the Armans. Scarlet asked him who he was talking to, and the emperor realized that the fortune-teller had revealed the Armans' feelings, their envy, and secrets. He didn't yet know if it was possible to use a woman to get the information he needed. But then the guy saw the young lady touch the cage and said that this criminal was pretending to be crazy, so it was better to stay closer to her. However, the main character only wonders if these are really fairies, and the woman in turn asks why the girl does not believe in them, since fairies only open up to those whose hearts are pure. The main character carefully gets to her feet and tries to understand whether this is really possible. After this, she tenderly embraces His Majesty's arm, confessing that she has always felt a special weakness for him and cannot resist. The woman is shocked, asking if the girl really meant His Majesty, and the young lady confirms this and thinks how interesting it would be to see the expression on the guy's face. At this moment, the emperor turns to the young lady, as if preparing to say something. But then someone carefully reaches out to her and remarks that the girl's taste is unusually refined. At that very moment, the emperor points his sword at the woman and declares that she is just a criminal playing with people's minds and should not be trusted. He also warns her to be careful, and the main character realizes that these words are meant for her, after which she admits her mistake and asks for forgiveness. The girl realizes that she came to him because he is not the one who will put her into eternal sleep. The main character just wonders if he will really protect her, rubs her eyes, and is surprised that this is possible. She admits that she is very curious because she believes in fairies, and the emperor asks if she is talking about them. The blonde answers affirmatively, but notices she can't see them, and it's all in vain. The young lady realizes the girl is simply trying to express her thoughts. At this point, His Highness turns away and sighs, suggesting that they return, then looks back at the young lady, who wonders if she has succeeded this time. She also understands that sometimes stupidity hides where innocence appears. Scarlet notes that, in addition to the usual madness, it is important to consider the lack of a sense of reality, and the main character realizes that the guy has been ignoring her. This seems like a real disaster. Meanwhile, the emperor turns to the lady and extends his hand to her, and the main character does not understand why this is so. But she still takes his hand, and the emperor holds it tightly. He pulls her towards him, causing a mixture of surprise and excitement in the girl. Looking ahead, the young lady notices a woman with blonde hair and wonders if they were meant to meet. The guy confirms that this is true and invites the girl to ask him anything, and she asks who it is. The emperor only smiles and notes that even if this woman were to fall into eternal sleep, her gaze would remain fixed on one of the Armans. The silver-haired lady remains silent, but then turns to His Majesty, asking how he is feeling, and the emperor replies that everything is fine. They haven't seen Fran for a long time, and the woman agrees, after which the emperor turns to the food, offering to ask her something. The main character watches the woman in amazement and realizes that she sees a real clairvoyant. The woman turns to the young lady and says that her visions are far away, but she sees everything, and the main character feels like her head is spinning. The seer states that a choice must be made, changes have already begun, and reminds that what was once fixed is now broken. She then blesses the girl, and the main character begins to see strange hallucinations. The emperor suddenly takes her aside and orders her to stop, breaking the strange charm of the moment. The woman looks at the boy and agrees, and the young lady turns to the emperor and asks if he can let go of her hand. He does so, and the girl loses her balance, almost falling, asking what she should do if he lets go of her hand, and the guy asks if she really has no reflexes. The woman laughs, and a little while later, the emperor is already sitting at the table. A young man with green hair approaches him and asks if His Majesty is still there, as the lady had just gone home. The emperor calmly replies that everything is fine. The advisor approaches the emperor with a question about what happened in the dungeon and whether Fran accidentally let it slip. The boy confirms this, and the green-haired youth expresses surprise, asking if it's true. The emperor informs him that Lady Armand asked him to convey her apologies and asks the advisor not to be angry with her. He also recalls the young lady insisting that everything was fine and reminding her not to pretend that everything was fine, adding that even if it was a prophecy, it was only a possibility and not worth clinging to. The main character ran her hand over the flowers and, smiling, declared that everything was indeed fine, not paying attention to other people's words, deciding to live for today. The girl is sure that if she is happy today, then everything is fine. This is her own theory. The main character notes that today she is very happy and feels joy. The green-haired boy hears all the events from the dungeon and notices that Fran is talking nonsense and also wonders what it means that what was once fixed is now broken, considering this another incomprehensible prophecy. He then turns to the emperor, asking if the young lady is all right. The emperor assures her that she will be fine and there is no cause for concern. At this point, His Majesty remembers the girl who seemed to be obsessed with superstitions and thinks that at least this will ease her boredom a little. After these thoughts, the emperor smiles and considers everything went well. Meanwhile, the main character returns home, admitting to herself that she's more tired than she expected, and gets ready to go to bed. But then someone asks if she's arrived. It turns out it's her brother. He also asks what she's been doing, that she's awake at this hour, and the girl wonders, puzzled, what's going on. The brother wonders if he should have said such words, and then sighs and says that he is glad to have her back, and therefore advises the girl to go and get ready for bed. Scarlet thinks to herself that he is talking nonsense again, and wonders why he is interfering in her affairs. However, the guy asks her if she thinks he's unaware of what's going on, and if he shouldn't be worried when something dangerous happens. Scarlet is shocked and can't believe it. The guy reminds her that she may have forgotten, but she once almost ended up in an eternal sleep, and asks if she knew about it then. With tears in his eyes, he asks her if she wants him not to worry. Scarlet is shocked and thinks he was genuinely worried about her, and she begins to cry herself. The main character apologizes to Isar, promising that next time she will come earlier. Afterwards, the young lady thanks him for his concern but asks him not to worry too much, assuring him that everything will be fine. She also announces that she is going to bed and wishes Isar good night. In her mind, the girl thanks him again and realizes she will try to avoid getting into dangerous situations again. Starting tomorrow, she plans to act more carefully. 3 days later, the young lady comes to the Imperial Bank and holds out a stack of gold coins, smiling at the surprised woman working there. The woman asks if the lady wants to acquire as many safe zones as possible in the west of the palace, to which the girl answers in the affirmative. The bank employee explains that, given her current status, the young lady can purchase about 300 dimes of land, which is roughly equal to half a football field. Everyone in the bank is whispering, wondering if this is the same crazy lady, Armand. The girl overhears this and calmly replies that it's not bad, and she'll choose the maximum rate. The woman confirms and asks the lady to sign, promising to contact her later with the results. Scarlet thinks, great, now the land issue is resolved. The girl asks Sir William to prepare a carriage. He agrees and asks if his mistress will go straight to the estate. The main character replies that no, she will go to her land, smiling and realizing that if she waits a little, her precious money will bear fruit. Soon the young lady finds herself on the spot and realizes that this is the safe zone. She notices that the zone is closer to the palace than she expected. She recalls a book in which Shirla and the fairies, plunged into eternal sleep due to hunger, are soon born in this place. Scarlet realizes that fairies love sweet, fruity scents, which is how they met Shirla, whom she dipped in juice. This important creature was given wings, as the girl herself had no powers. The main character realizes that since fairies love fruit, she should buy some seeds from the magical garden on her way back. She doesn't need much. One fairy stone will be enough. At that moment, she hears someone's voice, who claims that it seems they do not want to pay tribute to Bathory, and because of the invasion, problems will arise today. It is His Majesty, and he replies that it is better to leave them alone, because they will soon fall into eternal sleep. The boy almost cries as he turns to the Emperor, who suggests that he bring the ball himself, and then he will personally put them into eternal sleep. The main character suddenly recognizes Charles, the same blonde man from the banquet hall, and at that moment it seems to her an incredible coincidence that the entire Emperor suddenly went out for a walk. His Majesty, meanwhile, decides to wait a little, not giving up no matter how much his income is cut off, because his pride is more important to him than anything else. Scarlet notices at this point that she herself barely managed to hide without noticing. From the noisy Scarlet's point of view, the idea turned out to be unexpectedly successful, and she feels how everything around her is surprising. And the servant, turning to the Emperor, asks why he is acting so strangely. But the man suddenly hears some sound and asks what it means. At that very moment, the young lady suddenly jumps out to the Emperor, assuring herself that she missed him more than anything in the world. The girl suddenly finds herself on a small stone and loses her balance, desperately trying to hold on but feels herself starting to fall. However, His Majesty manages to grab her, and Scarlet realizes that her plan has completely gone awry. Charles recalls, with a hint of mockery, that someone said that Lady Armand was acting like a child, but Scarlet barely pays attention to this and notices how handsome the Emperor is up close. The boy asks what she's doing here, and the young lady feels a slight fear, aware of the danger. The blonde man recognizes her as Lady Scarlet, but remains puzzled as to why she emerged from the forest. Meanwhile, the Emperor appears to be in a tense mood due to the situation with the temple, and any outburst of anger could be dangerous for the bride, so it's important to protect her before her emotions reach their breaking point. His Majesty asks if everything is all right, and perhaps fatigue will force him to take the young lady to safety. The Emperor ignores the escort and merely asks if the girl is hurt, to which she replies that she is, but only in her heart. His Majesty, surprised, asks how anyone can hurt their heart without even falling. The blonde watches them with curiosity, noticing that although the Emperor appears to be irritated, he is not so hostile as to completely avoid touching the girl. The protagonist reflects on how His Majesty is so handsome that his very face has stirred her heart, and the Emperor replies that she's talking nonsense. Charles wonders if their relationship is better than he imagined, and realizes he urgently needs to intervene. The blonde reminds the Emperor of his many affairs, noting that his silence is a good sign and confirmation that the situation is under control. The Emperor merely orders them to move on, and Scarlet wonders why Charles doesn't leave, as it would save her from unnecessary worries, even if the moment were inappropriate. The girl thinks about how much longer she will have to dance in front of him and how close the outcome of her story is. Scarlet wonders if she can somehow anger Charles, but quickly realizes that it won't work and decides to take action by asking His Highness what she is doing here. The Emperor confirms his interest, and the young lady states that she has come to study the land as she plans to purchase it. His Majesty is surprised and asks what this is about, to which the girl answers confidently, naturally, because of this. Scarlet explains that there are rumors of fairies inhabiting the area, and the silver-haired blonde immediately remembers the strange woman they met in prison. The Emperor asks her about her age, and the main character assures that she believes in fairies regardless of age, because miracles know no bounds. The girl reasons that if she manages to meet fairies, then wealth and land ownership will cease to be so important, although it seems to her that she is behaving naively, like a child who believes in fairy tales and spends a fortune on them. At that moment, she sees the guy put his hand on his head and understands it's a reaction, but she feels pitiful because he doesn't seem to want to see her anymore. She thinks he won't be able to avoid her unless he sorts out what's going on. Scarlet realizes that this is not the end and decides to move on. She reminds herself that she is his fiancé and asks if the land can be bought cheaper, after which silence falls between them. Looking at the emperor, the young lady wonders if her request was too bold. Meanwhile, the young man apologizes and puts on his gloves. The girl is surprised by his actions and wonders if he wants to hurt her, but he only closes his eyes. The guy carefully brushes the leaf from her hair, realizing that the young lady is not afraid of him, and promises to consider her request. Scarlet is slightly surprised and thanks him, but the emperor reminds her that it's late and time to go back. She asks him to be careful. A little later, Scarlet lies in bed, wondering why she didn't just say a polite goodbye instead of warning him to be careful. She also understands that he is incredibly handsome, and she does not understand why villains almost always have an attractive appearance. Because the emperor himself remains the same, it is just the meeting in the forest that changes the perception. The main character comes to the conclusion that the problem is not in the environment, but in the situation itself, and thinks about how to explain it. Charles Carlier was confident in his feelings for the woman he loved and for other people, which made him unwavering in his personal relationships. He was infinitely kind to those he loved, but stern and harsh to everyone else, and Scarlet knew she couldn't change his ways. The emperor remained a figure of respect and belonging to society. Remembering how he commented on her courage, Scarlet wonders if he smiled even a little when he said it. The girl realizes that he remains cold, but at that moment, someone knocks on her room door, and, getting out of bed, she thinks who could be there at such a late hour, and could it really be the Duke? And it was at this very moment that it seemed ideal to burst into her room in anger, because she was ignoring him. He was about to hit her, and the girl was rushing away, but now the young lady understood that it would no longer be possible to leave. At that moment, a voice behind the door announced that it was him, and asked her to open it, asking if she was currently asleep. The girl realized that it was all Izar's voice, but she decided to joke a little and said that there was someone else there. The boy became slightly angry and asked if she was in the bathroom, and the young lady thought that he had mistaken her for the Duke again. In the end, she agreed that she would go, but then she thought about it. She became curious about what he was doing at such an hour and why he had come, and she decided not to open the door. He also asked if he wanted to enter her bedroom late at night when she was clearly upset. Izar was surprised and asked what she was talking about. Scarlet noticed he was speaking to her in a commanding tone, and the boy insisted he had an important message and wanted her to open it. The young lady decided it was best to ignore him, as they had never had a friendly relationship. The girl cautiously clarified that she might not be dressed, and the guy exclaimed that was crazy. The main character asked him to speak more quietly. She understood that if they quarreled, the Duchess would know how to punish her, so it was better for him to speak from behind the door. The young man sighed and agreed. Then he leaned against the door and said that he wanted to reassure her that everything would be fine and that she should sleep peacefully. The young lady wondered what he was talking about and was surprised that he could be worried about her, only fearing that she would not sleep because of fear of the Duke. Scarlet opened the door, and the guy was slightly surprised by this action. However, the girl only asked if he was ill, and after a short conversation, they wished each other good night. The Duke did not call Scarlet that night. The main character was thinking about how to cause him a little trouble. Should she give him earthly flowers, because of which he could go bald? Or a spider bred by a magical tower? She considered all this with a feeling of guilt toward Izar. Meanwhile, her fiancé admired her fearlessness because she did not flinch even before the formidable emperor. One day, a prophecy appeared that His Highness had been born under an unlucky star, and if nothing was done, the imperial family and the entire empire would be in jeopardy. The prophecy seemed far-fetched, but no one could deny it. The temple's power was great, and the priest said that for the empire's prosperity, the prince's fate must plunge him into eternal sleep to undo the consequences. When everyone rejected the prince, he took up the sword to survive. The guy turned out to be a man capable of putting people into eternal sleep, and it was difficult to call him an ordinary person. All he had left was the title of Tyrant, but Scarlet Armand was exceptional for him. The girl considered him different and communicated easily with him. If anyone had heard it, they wouldn't have believed it, but Charles sensed that she wasn't afraid of him. The emperor looked at the land papers on the table and remembered the young lady who had asked to sell her the plot of land cheaper. He didn't understand whether she was scared or embarrassed, but this land belonged to the fairies, and if he refused, the girl would definitely be angry. That's probably why he thought that the young lady might still try something and decided to take a chance. The next day, a man came to the main character and informed her that the document was issued in the Empire and contained information about the transfer of the safe zone. He invited Scarlet to carefully review the papers and sign them. It turned out to be Charles's undercover advisor, and the main character thanked him. Then she considered how much she wanted to take, and looking at the document, she was surprised. The prices remained the same. The girl also thought that the landowner hadn't told her anything else. The young man with red hair asked in surprise if there were any difficulties with the paperwork. Scarlet explained that she didn't understand, and it seemed he was using the contract merely as an excuse to meet. At this point, the advisor noted that the emperor had said nothing more, but if the girl wished, she could request an audience. He promised to look over the schedule. The young lady crumpled the papers slightly, remembering that Charles had promised to consider the matter. So the girl turned to the red-haired boy again, wondering if he was flirting with her. The young man was surprised, and the maid accidentally spilled his tea. He wondered if she was sure she wasn't upset, then turned to the young lady, wondering what exactly he should say to the emperor, who demanded he remember everything she said. The girl merely smiled slightly and admitted she'd gotten carried away, asking him to leave it at that. The guy thought she was stranger than everyone had said and handed over the papers, finally offering to sign them. At that moment, the young man could not believe that his lord was actually dating a young lady. He turned away from the girl, and the main character wondered if he was playing hard to get. And before her sat His Majesty's true love. She signed the documents, checking to make sure everything was all right with the young man, and received confirmation that the process would be completed upon the imperial family's approval. The girl hoped everything would go smoothly, and they said goodbye. The maid asked Miss if she should set the table, but the main character declined and asked for the carriage to be prepared. Lucy inquired where her mistress was headed. The girl explained she was going to the bank to inspect the purchased land again. The maid agreed and assured her that all preparations would be made. A little later, the heroine was already riding in a carriage, savoring the sweets and feeling calm. She had trusted Charles too much and thought she would buy the land for half the price, though this turned out to be a mistake. The tyrant said he'd thought about it, but the girl knew she needed to think positively. She recalled how she could have gotten so angry when she asked for a discount, having never worked with a magical garden before. The young lady decided it was worth going today, enjoying the beautiful weather, and asked how much longer it would be. Kucha replied that they were almost there. The main character began to search for the magic garden, carefully examining the surroundings. But, glancing at the map, she wondered if she'd made a mistake, and felt like she was going crazy. Suddenly, someone called her, and the blonde turned around, thinking she'd heard a woman's voice. A woman approached her and asked if she was lost. Rumor had it the girl was insane, but the woman seemed to have her own mental issues. Last time Scarlet had been so shocked that she'd passed by, but this time it was different. She watched the woman closely. The green-haired lady asked if the girl dared to threaten her, since it was extremely rude to talk about wanting to live in such a crowded place. Scarlet reminded herself that she had asked about her intentions earlier, but now she remembered how she herself had said that she was tired of living. Thinking back to her past life, she wondered if this was the green-haired lady from the prom. The girl became slightly frightened and clarified that her hair was more golden green than just green, and it became clear to the main character that she was not interested. Scarlet decided that if the golden green-haired lady was finished, she would leave. But the woman demanded to wait and introduced herself as Peridot Fleta. When the heroine turned around, the woman asked if she was listening to her at all. Scarlet decided to check whether the lady was trying to befriend her, although she herself remained wary. She would be glad if not, because the young lady was not the kind of person she liked. The green-haired lady visibly shivered and thought that Scarlet was as cold as ever. She was the daughter of the noble Armand family, accustomed to fearing all evil, and she barely considered people like Scarlet human. The woman didn't even remember her name, but asked if the girl knew that she wouldn't live long. The main character was surprised, but realized that this might not be unfounded. all of the tyrant's brides had already fallen into eternal sleep, some at his own hands, some at the hands of others. Whatever the truth, Scarlet believed it was best not to speak about it out loud on the street, as the consequences could be dire. She wondered if, sooner or later, she too would fall into eternal slumber. The green-haired lady remarked that the story was boring. Scarlet decided there was no point in continuing the conversation, though she herself wondered why everything was so complicated. She decided that this was the last warning and that the girl should wait and see the consequences. The protagonist warned that the lady should watch her words if she didn't want to prematurely fall into eternal sleep. Scarlet understood that she would live no matter what. When the young lady left, the green-haired woman remarked that it was extremely rude. A young man watched all this from around the corner. Soon His Majesty studied the report and asked if the one on the young lady was complete. The young man confirmed that, yes, the investigation was now complete. The Emperor reflected on the fact that the girl was behaving with him completely differently than usual, and wondered whether this reflected her true nature or was simply an unusual demeanor. The young lady even allowed herself to hint that she was interested in whether he was flirting with her. After this, His Majesty only smiled slightly, and the young man with red hair wondered whether the Emperor was laughing seriously and turned to him with a question. He wondered if the Emperor was actually communicating with Lady Armand. The Emperor raised an eyebrow slightly, wondering if the advisor had gone mad, interfering in the young lady's affairs when he was tasked with conducting the investigation without causing unnecessary irritation. The red-haired youth sighed and demanded that his comrade stop fooling around and focus on his work. He agreed, after which Charles asked where Lady Armand was currently located. The advisor replied that, according to information received from spies, the lady was now in a safe place, out of danger. The Emperor then decided that he would continue the further investigation himself, trusting no one else. At this time, the main character remembered that she had already dealt with the Lady Stalker and understood that these lands turned out to be more expensive than she expected, but in the end, she managed to restore the balance. The young lady realized the situation was turning out well and was wondering if everything was going according to plan. At that moment, someone approached her and asked if she was still there. The main character turned around and wondered if it was the Emperor who approached her. However, her intuition told her that she was dealing with a brazen deceiver. The Emperor asked her what she was doing, and the young lady wondered if he had come to tease her on purpose. Meanwhile, the blonde was planting fruit trees. The guy asked why, to which the girl replied that the trees would bear fruit in 3 weeks. After this, the Emperor sat down next to the main character, and the girl noticed with surprise that he simply sat down on the ground, which truly stunned her. The Emperor watched the young lady, pondering the situation, while the girl explained that she intended to give the fruits to the fairies. The protagonist tried to come up with something unusual, but ultimately decided that quickly growing the trees and presenting the fruits would be enough. They spent the rest of the time in silence, and only then did the girl raise her eyes and look at the Emperor. He looked at her silently, slightly lifting the corners of his lips, and it was barely noticeable, but it seemed to the girl that he barely smiled. At that moment, she seemed to see something she shouldn't have seen, and it left a strange impression. The young lady turned away, feeling embarrassed, and realized she needed to say something to fill the awkward silence. Scarlet turned around and declared that the land was now hers, which caused the guy slight surprise. He clarified what exactly she meant, and the girl realized that he had returned to his normal state. The guy confirmed that it was clear that the land was now hers and hinted at a fee, but the main character refused and emphasized that she was not going to ask about anything. If the Emperor wanted to come more often, he agreed and suggested that upon her return she would rewrite the contract and he would sell the land for half the price. The heroine could barely contain her joy and was surprised that he had actually agreed so readily. The Emperor added one condition, and the young lady realized she had known about it beforehand and had been wondering what else he wanted to achieve. However, she decided to simply listen as they discussed the terms and remain calm during the negotiations. The young lady asked whether visiting rights would be limited, whether it would be possible to just come and go, and whether there would be fruit, to which the Emperor answered in the affirmative. The main character smiled sincerely, and the guy noticed that he didn't expect such a reaction from her. The girl continued to smile, delighted at the opportunity to obtain land at half price. The emperor was amazed at how enthusiastically she responded to the offer. Scarlet realized that she had managed to get a discount so easily and realized that she could now break off the engagement with peace of mind. Charles approached the girl and suggested adding the contract signing to the official schedule. The main character wondered if he wanted to meet in person and considered breaking up. He simply told her that the date would be sent to the duchy, and she should choose a convenient day. Scarlet felt admiration, but the emperor was indifferent to her emotions, deciding to choose the place for the meeting himself, after which he left her, considering the day complete. A few days later, at Armand's estate, a maid curiously asks what exactly Lady Scarlet is doing and what she is doing at that moment. The main character just smiles slightly and asks if she is curious to know, and if she wants to take a closer look at what is happening. In the girl's hands sits a small magical insect, which glows with a soft light and seems alive, as if it has a will of its own. The maid, noticing this, recoiled slightly and shuddered, seeing the unusual creature. Scarlet, in response, carefully stepped on the toy, realizing she had slightly improved its design. If you step on it correctly, the insect stops and leaves a message on the shoes. The maid, astonished, asks why, and the lady merely asks if she's curious. Suddenly, someone screams. It turned out to be the Duke. The servants asked what he was doing, but the man merely ordered everyone to get out of the way, demonstrating his imperious nature. It's as if the Duke's brow was written all over him that he was a difficult and cruel man. He suddenly burst into Scarlet's room, not hiding his irritation. The main character thinks this is revenge for the incident the day before yesterday. The maid informs her that the Duke is on his way, and the girl calmly asks if she's in the mood to meet him today. The maid offers to prepare the carriage, but Scarlet does not agree immediately, only specifying that she should be changed for the trip, given that she wants to look decent. The girl is about to enjoy the trip and a good dinner, after which she wonders what Lucy, her close friend, thinks about it. Scarlet smiles slightly, preparing herself for what lies ahead, knowing that soon everything will be arranged and she will be ready for the events of the day. At this time, the Duke is in his room, wiping a mark from his forehead. The butler enters and asks if His Excellency has summoned him. A butler named Vector serves the house of Armand. He asks about the mark on the Duke's face, who complains about the noise and asks where Scarlet is. Vector suggests calling a doctor or a mage. The Duke cries out, unable to bear disobedience, and demands that Scarlet be brought to him immediately. He promises to deal with her today and complains about the old butler, who seems useless to him. Vector understands that such behavior would have seemed impossible a few years ago. Duke Armand is the younger brother of the former Duke Aaron Armand. Aaron Armand was the first heir of his family, beloved by all for his kindness and justice. Many fortune tellers claimed that he would bring prosperity to the family, which was in decline, and even the elderly bowed before him. Even when Aaron fell in love with a simple girl, no one stood in the way of their love, and life seemed perfect. But the happiness was short-lived. He died suddenly at the age of 22. His beloved remained alone, becoming the first duchess because the baron chose her over another woman. The woman remained silent, hiding her feelings until her death. The Duke again demands that Scarlet be brought immediately, and the butler, seeing his despotism, agrees, realizing that the baron is becoming more and more domineering and intolerant. The lady suffered often in her youth, and Vector wonders how many times a month she has to deal with the Duke. After a while, Scarlet turns to the butler, asking if the Duke broke his glasses again. Vector is slightly surprised and reminds her that a lady shouldn't be in a place where Her Excellency might get angry. Scarlet insists that she still plans to go to town, but the butler warns that this is impossible. The girl states that the trip will not be free and offers her service in exchange. The young lady quietly approaches the butler and promises to help him if he wants to tease the Duke, but asks him not to say anything about the Duke himself. Vector agrees. Scarlet is pleased with the result, and the butler notices how she is beaming and happy with her mood. At this time, the emperor is laughing in his room. surprised that her reaction was so lively and energetic, although he expected a different reaction. The guy thinks that maybe she is thinking about breaking off the engagement, pretending to be crazy, and this is what makes her behavior funny and unpredictable. The tyrant likes her naive spontaneity, and he watches with pleasure how the girl acts completely differently than he expected. He considers her existence phenomenal, and for now he watches her without causing harm, realizing that someday, in a month, he will try to conquer her. At this time, Scarlet turns to Isar, noticing changes in his hairstyle and attire, noting that he began to look like a real nobleman and is almost unrecognizable. The girl realizes her brother is dressed differently, and the boy asks why she just came out now. Scarlet explains that she slept for a long time and asks about the Duke and Duchess. She also asks if they are ready to receive guests, noticing how the estate is decorated exquisitely and solemnly, as today is a special day for the duchy. It's the day of the elder dinner. When important guests arrive in the duchy, the entire family gathers, even if the guest hasn't arrived yet. The brunette asks why the girl obeyed the Duke, and the young lady understands that this is done in order to show the harmony and well-being of the family, demonstrating her status and authority. But as Isar said, she did not want to take part in this on the orders of the Duke, but the young lady is thinking about what she should do if she is interested in what the elders look like. After which, the young lady turns to her brother and tells him to wait for her. She also tells him that she has purchased a safe zone. But the guy tells his sister not to talk about this in front of the Duke and Duchess, to which the young lady agrees. Well, then someone asks what they are walking around there for. It turns out to be the young lady's stepmother. And the main character says that she and Ma'am haven't seen each other in a while. The woman only asserts that the elders will arrive soon, so they should come in quickly. Isar then turns to Scarlet and tells her to come in quickly, after which the young lady agrees. Well, he thinks that the woman is somehow strange and doesn't understand whether something happened. But her look is even more poisonous. The brunette at this time turns to Scarlet and claims that she always behaves like this, and also it seems as if she always does some useless things, just like her mother. The main character then turns around and asks if the woman just scolded her, and she remembers her mother when she wants to quarrel. Isar then tells Scarlet to calm down, but the girl only asks who could say such a thing to an orphan. But she heard such words from her, and it seems that the woman has lost the wisdom characteristic of her years. The brunette then simply smiles and says that the girl is indeed right. However, before she can finish her sentence, someone turns to the miss and confirms that she is right. Another man also claims that he doesn't like it, but she's right. After which someone says that they are glad to meet the Duchess. And the main character thinks everything can be understood at first glance, and these are the elders after all, so they ask how much longer they'll keep blocking the door. The man also insists that they shouldn't do something like that in public, so they should go inside. The main character then realizes, oh well, it's not the first time she's had a fight with her. A little while later, the girl is already sitting at the table, and Isar approaches one of the dishes and asks if she's feeling better. The girl then asks him what he's talking about. The guy only claims that he is sorry that the girl heard this from the Duchess, but the main character claims that it is not he who should ask for forgiveness for this. After which she tells him not to worry and to eat, since he's worried about nothing, after which the guy agrees. The game's leader then says, oh, okay, so what? Don't the elders seem as strong-willed as the Duchess? The guy claims he saw them at the last meeting in California, and they certainly don't have the sweetest personalities, but it may seem different to her, and the main character then asks why, after which the guy asks if she is asking, because he really doesn't understand. And the girl resembles her mother, after which she asks if she knows what this means to them too. Isar told the young lady about the relationship between the Armins and the elders, something not mentioned in the novel. What was unusual was that the Armin family had existed for a long time, and regardless of the country, they guarded the borders of the monster forest. For the family to be complete, cooperation between elders and their families is necessary, so unlike other families, elders have a special influence on the Armins. And in the end, to become the true head of the family, you need to win their trust. But now is the time when the relationship between the elders and the head of the family is not the best, and they even hate the family members, let alone trust them and be benevolent. But the previous duke was a man of honor, and it will not be like before. The elders are still the same, and probably because they are on the side of the previous duke. Therefore, for them, who loved the former duke and his beloved, Scarlet's existence is important. And the main character then replies that it's clear to her, and the guy is just wondering if it's awkward for the girl to talk about family. But she's completely ignorant of the issues that interest her, and he thinks that she didn't know about this either. At this time, the main character thinks that, in the book, even the great elders fell into eternal sleep as a result of the conflict and corruption of the family. And she thinks that if she escapes, then everything will happen like in the book. Well, then all these people will be destined to plunge into eternal sleep at the hands of the tyrant, and even her brother. At this time, the guy turns to Scarlet and asks if she is definitely okay. The girl answers and asks what they were talking about, and the guy tells her to come to her senses because after dinner, they'll be invited to California. The main character then realizes that the others have nothing to do with her, and she doesn't have to be responsible for them at all. The young man simply places his hand on the young lady's hand and insists that since all the elders are there, she shouldn't show herself in a bad light. The main character then asks what's wrong with his hand, and the man asks which one, then looks at him as he places his hand on the young lady's, and then he takes her away, after which he blushingly claims that he didn't even notice, and that she just suddenly began to look so surprised and worried. The main character then replies that it is clear, and this time she will believe him, but then asks what is wrong with his face. After this, Isar only tells her not to look at him like he's an idiot. And the young lady understands that there must be a way to save Isar, and this guy is the only one who is important to her, so she wants to save him. Not much time has passed since she came to this world, and someone here even treats her well and takes care of her, because it is the maid Lucy. And her only half-brother Isar, in this estate at least they should survive, and the main character thought that this would suit the elders, but the question is how to save them. At this time, the guy turns to Scarlet and tells her to wake up, because they are going to meet the young lady. Then they agree and understand that she is not strong enough to take responsibility, after which she wonders if there was anyone among the Armans who was strong enough to protect them. But the main character then understands that even if there was, why protect them? At this time, the guy turns to the head butler, who only bows and then says that the young master and young lady have arrived, and that His Excellency is waiting for them. Isar then looks at her sister and asks if she is ready, and the girl replies that she is ready and understands that for now the priority is meeting with their head of the family. After which she comes in, and the two of them are greeted. The Duke then asks why they are standing and let them pass and sit down. Isar obeys His Excellency the Duke, and the main character only remains silent, after which she sees the elders gaze and wonders why she didn't think about this, because Scarlet had elders. And now the young lady realizes she's found a way to save Isar and Lucy. Now the money Scarlet spent humiliating Shirla was being paid by the elders. And the girl thinks why they gave her money that was spent on harming others. And the reason is simple. The point is that they had a soft spot for Scarlet's mother, and her daughter had no choice but to become weak. No matter how close she was to Scarlet's mother, even the elders who lent her money had to convince everyone that anyone connected to black magic should be executed. Therefore, the main character understands that this time she will not take money from the elders. At this time, someone announces that they will begin a meeting of the heads of the Arman family, and the main character understands that, instead of that, they will owe her. At this point, the Duke asks if they are asking for money. One of the elders then claims that, frankly speaking, this is not only for the sake of his family, and he understands that if the fence of the monster forest is destroyed, the entire continent will be under threat, but Gertzak only replies that yes, and says that they want him to pay for poisonous mushrooms or something like that. One of the elders then says it's not a poisonous mushroom, but rather a plant with a remarkable effect on monsters. The woman then cries out that if this continues, the head of the family will not be able to escape responsibility, and the Duke then asks if they are threatening him. The main character then claims that there was more bickering at this meeting than she thought, and Isar claims that he told her about it. The elder then states that by order of His Majesty, last month they destroyed a group of goblins on the outskirts of the monster forest, and their place was taken by minotaurs, and the Duke then asks what they should do now. the elder replies that he's already spoken about this, saying their only option is to negotiate with the Minotaurs. The protagonist then realizes that even in the original story, the events in the monster forest took place around this time. The ancient magic created by the Armin's ancestors and the barrier between the forest and the rest of the territory began to weaken. Now they're trying to keep the monsters out using cavil, but that alone won't solve the problem. The main character then raises her hand and realizes that it would be nice to keep things that way, after which she states that they need cavil but asks if they could tell them what happened. However, the woman then insists that it doesn't matter, and that they don't even know themselves. The young lady then asks if they can find out, and the woman insists that they can't enter the monster forest because it's a forbidden area, and who would risk their lives by going there. The main character then realizes that she agrees, and that is why the tyrant accused them of incompetence. After which she realizes she needs to take stock, and in this case, the culprit is some kind of flower. It turns monsters into mutants who feel no pain and dispatches them. The Armin elders were unaware of this and tried to stop the demons with cavil, but the situation only worsened. Finally, the tyrant went into the monster forest to personally resolve the problem. Surprisingly, he found a flower not too far away, and stability returned to the forest, but the elders went to the guillotine. When the Minotaur disappeared, the wyverns appeared, and to save their lives, the problem had to be resolved quickly. The Duke at this time only asserts that he has no money and therefore let them keep this in mind, and the young lady understands that it is fortunate. The tyrant's words and actions matched the description of the flower, so she remembered everything, and for her, finding this flower was like a piece of cake, and in this case the girl understood that she would help them. At this point, Izar turns to Scarlet, asking why she was laughing so hard, as he's worried. The young lady replies that nothing, and that she just had an idea. The boy then asks her what she's up to that she's so excited. A little while later, the elders are already getting out of the carriage, after which the man tells them to carefully distribute everything so as not to get mixed up, as they need to load the suitcases into the cart. One of the servants then replies that he understands, and the main character then approaches one of the elders and addresses her, after which she is greeted. The woman then asks what the young lady is doing there, and whether she is mocking the elders, and the girl replies that not at all, and that is not the case at all, because she would like to give them something. After which the young lady presents them with jewelry and claims that she inherited it from her mother. The elder is then a little surprised there are women, and asks why the place does this. And the main character claims that she thinks they will need it, and asks if they didn't talk about it at the meeting, and she is not the head of the family, so this is the only thing she can give them, and also really hopes that it will be useful. The girl insists that their family values their elders highly, but just because they were turned away today doesn't mean they don't care. After which, the young lady also warns them to be careful. However, the woman claims that she will not leave right now, and the young lady asks if this is true, and the elder claims that she wants to wait a few days. After which he asks if it is possible to give up so quickly, since this is a serious matter. The elder also states that they are grateful for the young lady's kindness and will definitely repay her. And the main character then, with a smile on her face, understands that she has shown a sufficient degree of kindness, and it is better to talk when the issue is resolved. But she will tell them when the right moment comes. And when she leaves, they must protect Isar and Lucy. A little while later, the maid turns to Miss and insists that she did say the elders would remain in the Eastern Villa for now, but their protagonist says they apparently plan to stay there. The girl then claims that another letter has arrived from the Imperial Palace, and the young lady asks where the desired one is, after which the maid hands this letter to the main character, realizing that family meetings have distracted her, and she didn't even know the schedule would arrive today. Then the main character looks at it and realizes His Majesty is busy with state affairs and is next on the schedule. The girl is a little surprised when she reads that there is a request to respond as soon as possible, and the young lady wonders if he is serious, because she thought that this was a letter about breaking up, after which the young lady wonders if he has really gone crazy. And just as she thought, this vile tyrant can't be relied upon. Then the young lady realizes she, too, must change her strategy. The girl then turns to Lucy and asks her to bring her some walking clothes. And the maid then asks what the mistress would like, and the young lady states that she wants the most elegant and smart, but not without nobility and also a beautiful color. Lucy then thinks that the mistress most likely wants her to prepare a dress for her, after which she states that it is fine, and she will prepare it for her for tomorrow. Well, okay, the game does not answer that there is no, and she needs it now. After all, she's planning a meeting with someone, after which the young lady thinks they'll see if he can handle it. Meanwhile, the green-haired boy is just wondering why everything is going so well, considering he's filling out work paperwork for the first time in a month, and the morning meeting was cancelled so he was able to get a good night's sleep. So the emperor thinks he wished it were like this every day. Well, that's what he thought until he was told about the meeting with Lady Scarlet. And now someone claims that the girl said that it was for important business and even got ready in a hurry, so she did not have time to warn him, and he asked the girl to wait in the carriage. But when the young man with green hair sees the girl, he is even more shocked and asks if she really went out without an escort. The young lady then sees a guy in the window and happily waves at him, after which he tells her to let her in. A short time later, he pours her tea and tells her to drink it, as it's tea brought from the east. And if she doesn't like tea, he can bring her coffee. However, the main character only looks at him, wondering if she's afraid to tell him anything. The guy then asks why the young lady came, and the girl claims that even though she came suddenly, she will never believe that he doesn't care, after which he claims the Prime Minister hasn't convinced her. The young lady also asks if he remembers when they first met, and their first meeting took place in a dungeon. It was sad and beautiful, and fate began to play its cruel joke. The guy then wonders in shock what she is talking about. The main character simply says that he is her land and her heir, and she's so ashamed she doesn't even know what to do. The guy then cries out that he's never felt anything like this before, and the young lady asks how long he suffered alone. And yet, the Prime Minister, His Majesty's servant, feels such feelings for her. However, the green-haired youth then asks in shock what she's talking about now about the young lady, realizing that if the tyrant doesn't care about madness, there's another way. The maid is a little surprised at this point and asks what is going on there, and one of the servants replies that he doesn't know. The young lady understands that this guy is certainly a person who can cause a lot of problems for those around him, and thinks that with high-ranking persons it will be more difficult. Now the main character turns to the Prime Minister and asks if he likes her. The guy just looks at her in shock, thinking it's a disaster. The main thing he thinks is that she's naming Clover her first victim. The young lady only says that she understands and love is so uncontrollable. And whether you want it or not, it will still settle in the heart, but this has already happened to her, so she is used to it. But no matter how honest the guy is, the heart has nowhere to go. At this point, the green-haired boy just screams in shock, asking what the hell she was even talking about. And the young lady claims that this is exactly how he behaves and asks if this is not so, and the guy is worried when he sees her and also stutters and breaks out in a cold sweat. The guy then doesn't even know what to say, and the young lady once again turns to the Prime Minister and asserts that he cannot deceive her. The girl also understands that the guy was taken aback. The young man with the dirty hair is just wondering what the girl is even saying, and whether his actions could really be interpreted that way. But that can't be true, and he wonders if everyone else thought the same. And yet the smartest man in the empire was so easily taken in by such nonsense, because he's single and has never been in a relationship. At this point, the guy only embarrassedly claims that this is nonsense, and that saying that he likes the girl is too much. At this time, the young lady with a smile on her face asks if he admits that he likes her, and the guy just turns away and thinks, does love really have to be so unpleasant? He's been busy with work his whole life, so how could he possibly know what love is like? He also realizes he doesn't know what to do, but he needs to fix the situation. The guy then turns to the lady and states whether it is true or not, but suggests not to talk nonsense, and the young lady asks why, after which the boy wonders why it was Lady Armand. The boy then answers the young lady's question by saying that she is already engaged to His Majesty, but then he is shocked to realize that what if His Majesty finds out that he is in love with his bride? She certainly won't turn a blind eye to all this. The main character is wondering what the hell is going on. Then she turns to Sir Clover and asks if he's really crying. Scarlet also wonders if he really dislikes it so much that he's even crying. After which the young lady rises from her seat and asks for forgiveness, after which she asks if it was too much for him. The guy then simply turns to the young lady and asks if she likes laughing at him, after which the main character thinks that he is so rude. The girl then replies that, yes, and all because he likes her, and she didn't want it to sound that way. The guy then thinks that everything is not so and the young lady came to laugh at him, but then he thinks what love is. Scarlet then only asks for forgiveness for offending him, even though he does not accept his feelings. The guy just sighs afterward, and the young lady asks if she's pretty and says she knows, after which the young man cries out that everything is wrong. And when the young lady heads home, she realizes she didn't even notice how carried away she got, and it turned out even worse than she thought. But the young lady thinks that she still hopes that the Prime Minister will tell the Emperor's assistant about what happened, because if they all hate her, then the Emperor should be shocked. After all, no matter what kind of tyrant he is, he must save face as a king. At this time, the blonde turns to the Prime Minister and asks if he is there. After which, the guy comes into the room and says that he has a meeting that day and wants to report to His Majesty. However, the guy then only sees the Prime Minister sitting in despair and asking what happened. The green-haired youth then turns to Count Lumon and says he's popular with young ladies. The young man replies yes and asks why he's suddenly interested. The youth, with the highlighted stripes, then asserts that he must know what it's like to fall in love. The blonde replies that the Prime Minister has never spoken to him about anything like that before. The green-haired young man simply asks if that's what it means when someone's legs and hands shake, and their heart pounds so hard it makes them dizzy. The blonde then replies that he doesn't think the Prime Minister is talking about himself and asks if he's sick. However, Clover then asks what he is talking about, and the blonde asks what is going on, and also why he is talking such nonsense, and the young man with green hair then tells the guy to forget, and he also understands that it would be better for him not to tell anyone about what happened today. The next morning, a young lady stands near the outbuilding at the Armand estate and thinks that this is strange. After all, it's not even lunchtime yet, and so she doesn't understand where the elders have gone. She even asked Lucy to bake them cookies. The protagonist realizes that before solving the problem with the monster forest, she decided to draw their attention to Lucy, and if they hated her, where could they have gone? At this point, one of the elders approaches from behind and asks if this is Lady Scarlet. The protagonist then greets her. The woman asks what they're doing there. The main character replies that she was just passing by and asks where they were. The woman replies that they met with the largest traders in Cavell and that a large purchase will need to be made. The young lady then asks if they have met, after which she introduces her maid Lucy, but realizes that there is absolutely no interest in her. The main character then asks if they brought it there, and Koval then claims that she has read about it in books but has never seen it in person, so she is very interested. The woman replies that she has a couple, because she doesn't know what kind they want to sell her. After which she hands over the mushrooms and claims that Koval looks like this. And the main character, looking at them, says that it is very cute and asks if these mushrooms really scare away monsters. The woman then replies that their scent temporarily paralyzes monsters, and the girl thinks that this is a little strange, after which she does not understand why her body suddenly stopped obeying. Then the girl completely collapses, and the maid immediately runs up to the miss with concern. A little while later, the main character comes to her senses and thinks that she has a headache, she doesn't understand what happened, and she just talked to Lady Adrian in front of the villa. Well, then the girl wonders if she really teleported. However, the young lady says that it cannot be that, but she also thinks that this is a good moment, and she will turn out to have once seen this place And, moreover, she has never been here, but this must be a forest of monsters. Well, then the main character turns around and is a little surprised. After all, she sees the main character. The girl understands that she is the tyrant's beloved and doesn't understand what she's doing in such a dangerous place. The girl only claims that they said it should be somewhere here, a remedy that could replace Koval. The main character then wonders what this remedy might be, but the girl simply insists that she needs to win his heart. And the main character then remembers that in the novel, Shirla found something that could replace Koval. Well, the young lady wonders if the girl didn't figure it out on her own. And she definitely said that there were monsters in the forest, which means someone told her. Well, the main character thinks who the hell it could be, because, firstly, it's not a tyrant, and if Charles knew he wouldn't have told her, he decided everything himself. Scarlet also thinks that this is quite tricky, but she needs to keep an eye on this girl. And now the first thing you need to do is find out everything about the product. And if you remember, the girl wonders if this scene was in the novel, and there are significant differences with the novel. The lady with red hair stops at this point, and then says that here he is, Slime Geppetto. The young lady then realizes that this slime is not poisonous, but is a forest predator that feeds on monsters. It is small and cute and harmless to humans, but can swallow any, even the most ferocious monster. Therefore, now the young lady understands that the product that can replace Koval is Geppetto slime. The main character then thinks with a smile on her face that she is so lucky because she found out about the location so that next time she comes there alone, she will be able to find it. But at this time, someone shakes Scarlet and asks if she can hear him, and then screams for the girl to wake up. It turns out to be Isar, and he asks worriedly if she is okay. The young lady then looks also at the maid, who turns to Miss Scarlet with concern. Well, the main character is surprised and asks why they are all like this. The girl then asks if she really lost consciousness right in front of the villa, and if the guy really came all this way with her in his arms. The young man then replies that it's true and she's nothing but trouble. The girl then thinks it's so strange, because she didn't lose consciousness, even when she was recalling scenes from the novel. The elder then asks if the lady is okay, since she fell for no apparent reason, and this is the problem. Isar also claims that Lady Adrian is right, it's good that there were people nearby, and they immediately brought the girl there, but what would have happened if she had lost consciousness where there was no one? The guy also says that if the young lady is not feeling well, then let her rest and not rush and not worry. After all, if she is uncomfortable in the estate, then she can go somewhere else. The main character then wonders if he is talking about a vacation and realizes that she wants to go to the elder's estate, and this is an excellent excuse. At this time, the woman notices the young lady's gaze on her and then asks, "What's the matter?" And the main character only understands that this is an excellent destination. But then one of the elders says he's against it, because if the girl wants to relax or just go on a trip, then why bother coming to them? The young lady merely asserts that their territory is also their family's territory, after all, and sending her away isn't a problem. The woman then claims that their territory borders a forest of monsters and asks if the girl understands how dangerous it is. But the young lady asks what to do with you if she wants to go. After which she says that they should show it to her, because all state affairs are connected, and when she returns, she will tell the Duke about everything she saw and heard. It would also be great to take a video communication tool with you. After all, it's more than just words. And it would be better for the father to see everything with his own eyes, but the young lady's brother then tries to object. And the woman just claims that this is not a bad idea, and the young lady claims that she will assume that they agreed, after which they think that this is how it should have happened, and instead of continuing to push on her father. If they take her, he'll be able to see everything with his own eyes, and the Duke will have no choice but to agree. Then one of the elders says she'll speak with the Duke. However, Isar replies that he does not agree, and the young lady asks what he is talking about, and the guy only once again asserts no. And even if the Duke agrees, he is against it, after which the guy asks if the young lady really wants to go with them to such a dangerous place. After all, just the journey there will take at least 3 days. However, the young lady then turns to her brother and tells him not to worry, as she will not be going there alone. The young man then asks with whom, and the girl replies that he will soon find out. A little while later, the emperor is already reading the sheet and then turns too. He goes to Clover Gesson and says that he has business, so let the guy postpone all his business for 2 weeks. The young man with green hair then asks where His Majesty is going, and the guy replies that the young lady seems to want to go somewhere. A short time later, the butler announces that the carriage is ready and they can depart as soon as it's brought. The Duke insists that the imperial family will be visiting soon, so they should behave appropriately. But the elder says this should be communicated to the Duke. The main character understands that she will finally go to the Forest of Monsters, but she wonders why Charles is still not here, because he should have gone a long time ago. The Duke claims that the Emperor is late, and it does not matter that he is a member of the Carlier family, but must respect them. The main character then asks why her father is so pleased, and her brother replies that he should be proud that the Emperor himself is coming to see him. The young ladies then ask if it's true that the imperial family has never visited the Armans before, and Isar asks if he really thought it was a joke. The girl understands that although the Duke's intonation could indicate the opposite, she still thinks it is true. The Carlier imperial family and the Arman family. The relationship between the border guard family and the ruling imperial family has always been paramount. It's a long-standing relationship. So everything will end with the wrath of the tyrant, because the Armans did not fulfill their duties. At this time, Isar turns to the young lady and asks what the hell she is thinking about, since going with His Majesty is a bit too much. However, the main character then asks if she isn't His Majesty's fiancée, and realizes that they are forced to spend 3 days and 3 nights together, and she wants him to tire of her during that time. Isar then asks what the girl told the Duke, and the young lady replies that she said that she would go there to recover, and he immediately gave her permission, but she still thinks that there is something suspicious about it. A young lady recently approached His Excellency the Duke. The man then turned around and asked why she wasn't knocking. The young lady asked if that was true, after which she claimed she needed to tell him something and asked if she could. Scarlet also wondered what he was hiding there, since she could see everything. The girl also claimed that she had recently fainted and was apparently feeling ill, so she was considering visiting the elders for a while. Scarlet also saw a crystal ball for communication and wondered if the man was having a secret affair. The Duke then asked where the girl would be staying, and the young lady replied that she would be staying at Lady Adrian's estate, to which the man only remained silent and then said that she should not say that she wanted to become an heir. The young lady was then a little surprised and asked what he was talking about, because she wouldn't have done it even if he had allowed her. The girl also asked if he didn't know that she dreamed of not working. The Duke then claimed that he could not allow her, and the young lady wondered why he hated her so much. Afterwards, she asked if he'd let her go, and realized it wasn't even hatred but caution. The blonde then insisted that he saw how sick and thin she was, and that she needed a quiet place and fresh air. However, after this, the man only smiled and replied that it would be fine and on the way there. However, the young lady then asked what he was talking about and claimed that she had not heard. The Duke replied that this meant that he gave her permission and that when these old people left, she could follow them. Scarlet agreed to this and then said that with his permission she would go. But the man then asked if she really didn't remember anything. That yes, something like a seal or a ring. He'd asked again and again, but he couldn't understand why the girl was pretending not to hear about it for the first time. The main character then thinks about what he is talking about, after which she claims that no, and it was just like a bolt from the blue, and she doesn't remember anything. However, the girl thinks it can't be, and wonders if the Duke is really looking for this. The man, meanwhile, insists that if she doesn't remember anything, then that's fine. And the main character thinks about the Arman's seal. It's magic passed down through the Armans generations. There's also proof of family affiliation in the form of rings or seals. Does the Duke have this or not? If so, he didn't become the true head of the family, which means only the seal of Esled can help. So the young lady wonders why the man is asking Scarlet about her. And she doesn't know why, but in the end it's useful to remember this, because each time she takes on different forms. and she doesn't know what form she is in now. At this point, Isar turns to his sister and asks what she's doing. She doesn't understand what he's talking about, and the brunette only tells her to bow, because His Majesty has arrived. The girl then also bows, and the Duke immediately greets His Majesty and says that he has come a long way there. The Emperor then thanks Duke Armand for the invitation. The man then says that, like His Majesty, he knows their family. The main character is watching all this at this time and says that the Duke is so excited that His Majesty doesn't even listen. Isar replies that he agrees, after which he turns to the young lady, and he asks who these two are. The young lady then realizes it's the blonde man, Count Luman, who is the head of intelligence. And next to him, apparently, is the commander of Charles's knights, but then she thinks to find out exactly who they are. Now the main character claims that she sees them for the first time, but Isar then asks why they like the girl so much. The young lady then seriously wonders why they're smiling so much. At this time, the Emperor approaches the girl from behind and addresses her, to which the young lady becomes a little frightened, and she wonders if it could really be Charles. The guy simply claims that the young lady falls beautifully, and the girl then wonders why she's worried, and if it's because they haven't seen each other in a while. At this time, the Emperor only greets her and asks how she is doing. The main character then replies that she kept thinking about him and never imagined time could drag on so long. Charles replies that this is commendable. The young lady, shocked, wonders what he, a young man, should be angry about. His Majesty, meanwhile, turns to Luman and tells him to bring what he asked for, to which the young man agrees. After which the young lady is presented with a bouquet, and the blonde man claims that it is a gift from His Majesty. The main character then asks why there are flowers all of a sudden, and the guy replies that he saw these flowers and thought about her, after which the girl became a little embarrassed. She asks why, but she doesn't understand whether he really thinks that she is as beautiful as these flowers. Well, the guy at this time just asks if they don't remind her of her head, after which the main character thinks what a bastard he is, and the blonde man behind him laughs and insists he was right. The knight commander then replies that the boy was indeed right after all, to think that His Majesty would amuse himself like that, but it seems he really did fall in love. Then the man tells Miss Scarlet to get into the carriage, and when the young lady looks at her, she wonders what's wrong with the carriage. One of the elders then replies that it's their carriage and asks if something is wrong. The main character then realizes that they really do need the money, after which she says that perhaps she should ride in the same carriage with His Majesty. But the butler claims that His Majesty did not say anything about this and asks if they should prepare another carriage. But the Emperor replies that it is not necessary and they are still going to the same place, and the main character thinks that at such moments he does not treat her as a bride. At this time, Isar turns to Scarlet, and the girl then asks what is going on and why he hasn't left yet, and the young man replies that it is because she is still here. After which, he also asks if the girl remembers what he told her yesterday. And the young lady understands that no matter how much she thinks about it, Isar is truly worried. The main character remembers how the guy approached her yesterday, after which he asked if she really liked His Majesty, and the girl choked on this, after which she asked why she liked him and why the guy was asking about it. However, the young man inquired why she was so surprised, given that they were engaged, after which the brunette also asked if His Majesty was not known for his cruelty. And the young lady then thought that yes, but she does not understand how he can call the tyrant simply cruel, because from the people he plunged into eternal sleep, one can put a whole mountain. However, the girl only replied to Isar that these were wonderful words, but the guy then only asked what was wrong with her and whether he had said something wrong. Scarlet replied that no, and this time he was right. The guy then asked her what she thought about the Emperor's cruelty, and the young lady simply asked if it mattered. Isar replied that it did matter to him because the girl wanted to marry him, but the young lady replied that she still felt uncomfortable talking about it. After which the guy simply stated that they needed to discuss something, because she's his younger sister. The main character then asked the guy if he was afraid he'd be cruel to her too, to which the guy responded, and even claimed, that he was worried, because no matter how much she didn't like His Majesty, he couldn't just stand there and watch him hurt her. The main character, looking at her brother's face, just laughed, after which she burst into tears of laughter. Thank God! What's wrong with his face? And how many times does she have to tell him not to worry? Because she can take care of herself. And then the guy just sheepishly asked if she could listen seriously. Well, Scarlett then thanked him and claimed that he was the only one who was worried about her, and the guy then told her to take it. And the main character asked what it was, after which the young man claimed that it was a magical device for sending messages, and that he could communicate over a long distance with the person who had such a device in his hands. Therefore, if the young lady is in danger, let her immediately inform him, and he will go to her. Now the young lady tells the guy not to forget what she asked for, and claims that the safe zone needs to be watered once a week, after which she asks if he understands. The girl also says that she will be back soon. And the young man with a smile on his face tells her to return to Korea, after which they set off on their journey. One of the knights then says that this is just funny, and they left not long ago, but he doesn't even know how many times they've stopped, and he doesn't even know where all these bandits are from. The main character then replies that she doesn't know either, but then he asks in shock what the Count is doing there, and why he is not riding in their beautiful imperial carriage. The man then asks the lady how he can ride in the same carriage as His Majesty. Scarlett asks Togo to stop talking nonsense and return to his carriage, but the guy just ignores her and says it's bandits again, after which he asks if it's because of the poor organization of the area. Well, the young lady silently tells him not to pretend he doesn't know. At this time, someone turns to Miss Scarlett and asks for forgiveness. It turns out that these are elders, and the main character then realizes that this is their territory. Scarlett then asks why they are apologizing, because she thinks that the bandits appeared because the imperial carriage is traveling with them. Well, luckily they are accompanied by knights and His Majesty in the carriage in front of them. That's why the girl asks if he thinks the bandits are his equal. But suddenly someone screams that one of the bandits has escaped. After which the knight screams so that everyone gets confused and finds him again. This rat cannot be let go alive under any circumstances. But at the same moment, the main character looks out the window in shock, and he sees that same bandit there, after which he says that he has finally found Scarlet Armand. Well, at that very moment, someone hits his head on the carriage from behind, and the young lady realizes that this is His Majesty. The Emperor isn't asking for show, and the girl replies that no, and thanks to him, she's safe. While the elder is worried about his carriage, the young lady only realizes that she is surprised, and then asks what His Majesty is doing there. Other knights also head towards His Majesty and ask if he is all right, and the young ladies realize that behind them is the Emperor's favorite horse. And the young lady thinks that he should just not say that he rode here on a horse. At this time, the Emperor only tells the lady to come out and extends his hand to her, after which he offers to ride with him in his karate. Once the girl is already in the imperial carriage, she asks what he just meant, and the guy asks if she really has no idea, after which she claims that these villains are looking for Lady Armand. After which the guy asks if she has heard about the Pan assassins. The girl then realizes that this is the imperial family from another empire that produces many unknown assassins. Rumor has it that they appear wherever they are mentioned, and that their goal of entering a frantic sleep will inevitably end, no matter who it is, but the main character also thinks Scarlett couldn't have anything to do with it. Therefore, she claims that she has never heard of them and only knows that they are a family of assassins. But considering this Pan, weren't they displaying too much unprofessional skill? The Emperor discerns that this is definitely true, but they were using Pan's breath, and even if they are not from this group, they are still assassins. So they cannot be equated with ordinary thieves. So the man asks if there is anyone who wants to put the young lady into eternal sleep. The main character then thinks that maybe it was Duke Armand, and this is only an assumption but cannot be excluded. The young lady asks if they will return, and the Emperor replies that he is sure that their return is not such a big problem. The young lady, when she asks what he's talking about and whether he's saying that Pan's assassins chasing her is no big deal, wonders if he's really saying he doesn't care whether she falls into eternal sleep or not. So the young lady says that this is true, and His Majesty may consider the current situation a trifle, but for her, it is not so. However, the emperor then turns to the lady and asserts. What he means is that she has nothing to worry about, at least while she is with him, because no one will dare to touch her with a finger, so she can calm down. The commander of the knights at this time turns to Lady Armand and asserts that they sincerely ask for forgiveness, because this incident was only their fault, so he asks to spare them this time. The main character then replies that everything is fine and everyone arrived safe and sound. But the row was so calm that she even fell asleep in the middle. Then the girl also looks at His Majesty and, noticing his gaze, asks if something is wrong. The guy replies that everything is fine and now he will let the situation go since these people left okay. The commander of the knights then thanks His Majesty, and the young lady wonders if it was really that unusual. At this time, the blonde also turns to His Majesty and says that he needs to check something. The main character then says that they will see each other at dinner, and the guy tells her to rest, to which the young lady agrees and states that she will wait for him. The girl understands that although it was just an awkward carriage ride, she was safe, thanks to His Highness. And the young lady also wonders if this means she should thank him. A little while later, the knights are already setting up their tents and starting to cook. The young lady then taps her glass and asks everyone for a moment of attention. After everyone turns their attention to her, the young lady states that she just wants to thank everyone for today. After all, they'd tried hard and they'd arrived safely. One of the elders then asked the girl what she had planned this time, and the main character claims that since everyone has finished dinner, while they are resting, she wants to give them a gift for their hard work, that is, a beautiful serenade. Then His Majesty also comes to the table, and the young lady, with a smile on her face, looks at him, the entrance to which the girl says that they should listen carefully, and he begins to sing. The knights then watch all this, and they say, a little puzzled, that the lady probably isn't very good at singing. The girl also wonders how they can do it. Scarlet understands that the gift is not that special, but the tyrant will not be impressed by something simpler, and now she is going to look at his expression. He sees that he is smiling, and the main character is shocked, wondering what he is doing. And is Charles really smiling? That same evening, the young lady lays in bed and thinks how tired she is. She thought the guy wouldn't like her singing in front of others, but the opposite happened, and who knew he'd dissipate. Scarlet also wonders if he is ashamed of her, and the girl doesn't even know what else she can do in this carriage. And then she thinks that, since she can't sleep, maybe she should go for a walk. The young lady goes outside, but then sees His Highness there with his horse. Then he asks what His Majesty is doing there. The boy replies that he's returning to his patrol and asks if anything has happened to the lady. The girl replies that she just wanted to get some air. The emperor asks if she's alone at such a late hour. The young lady replies yes and asks, "What's wrong with that?" Charles then thinks about all the robbers and the aspen trees and wonders if the girl hadn't even thought about it. The young lady then asks him what's wrong, and the emperor replies that he has no right to stop her. Scarlet then asks if he will return to the hotel, and the guy replies that she said that she wanted to go for a walk. A little while later, they are already riding a horse, and the main character, wrapped in the guy's cloak, thinks that this is too awkward. Well, she still doesn't understand why he decided to take a walk, and whether he doesn't feel awkward around her. However, looking at the emperor's face, she thinks his father doesn't care, and then she realizes she needs to think of something to talk about. Then the young lady claims that he said that he has some business tomorrow and asks where he is going. The guy replies that he will go to Rishachel, and the main character realizes that there was no such name in the novel. The emperor states that half a day will be enough, and he will leave at dawn and return in the afternoon if there are no deviations in the schedule. The young lady then understands that Charles will be leaving for a short time this morning on diplomatic matters. To be honest, she doesn't like it when a guy is away because he doesn't ask for much. But when Charles ascended the throne, tyranny in other countries also diminished. But the main character wonders why she was upset. But then the emperor suddenly hears some noise, after which he tells the young lady to hold on tight. and the main character agrees. But when the horse starts to run, the girl turns to His Majesty and realizes that she is falling. After which he immediately grabs the guy, which surprises him a little, and he turns to the young lady, who, a little puzzled, replies that it's not what he thought. Well then, we hear another rustle, and the young lady cries out to His Majesty that there is something there and also grabs him even tighter, after which she cries out. However, only a small boar and a young lady emerge from the bushes. He asks what it is and whether it is really a wild boar. After which the young lady approaches him and claims that it was just a cute little piglet, but she thought they had stumbled upon thieves. The young lady also asks if he's not a cutie, and the emperor thinks he doesn't think so. He then remarks that Lady Armand is very relaxed even now, but when the girl asks what he is talking about, the guy tells her not to worry about it, and the young lady thinks what it is. But then he realizes that he must be worried about the bandits, so it's not surprising that he's acting like this. But he took her with him for a walk, so he needs to be cheered up a little. The girl then turns to His Majesty and asks if he owns a sword. After which the girl takes out a curved sword and claims that she bought it for a lot of money, and also asks what His Majesty thinks about it. After all, it is a magic sword of self-defense, and she bought it with the money the Duke gave her to spend on the trip. The girl also takes out the rest of the things and claims that this is a magic item that can light a fire, and this is a smoke bomb that can create a smoke screen. The emperor is just wondering where the hell she got all this from. And the young lady insists that she really wants to use these strange things. And even if they look scary, they are not dangerous. Then the young lady's brother's gift falls out of her pocket. His Highness notices and bends down to pick it up. He then asks if this is also a magical object. The young lady then replies that it's a transmitter made of a magical stone and can simply be used to notify someone far away. The girl understands that she did not buy it, and Isar gave it to her in case she had to leave His Majesty. At this time, the guy asks if the lady really needs such things. The girl replies that of course, and that's because she needs to be able to protect herself, at least partially, even without His Majesty's presence. The girl understands that the protagonist in the novel is very harsh, but incredibly kind to those he loves. The emperor at this time answers well, and the young lady asks what he means. His Majesty claims he's satisfied with this answer. The man insists that the boar's mother must be nearby and that they should leave, as she'll be arriving soon, to which the young lady agrees. The girl realizes that at least this night, she was glad to feel like the main character of a novel. At this time, the guy asks what she is doing, and the young lady understands that this is strange, but he sounded friendly. After which he pauses for a moment and extends his hand, agreeing with His Majesty. The girl wonders if it's because she covered his palm and it turned out not to be as cold as she thought, and this moment is like a dream from which she doesn't want to wake up. The next morning, Scarlet is already lying in bed and thinks that she is a little ticklish, after which she wonders who is next to her. The man then tells the young lady to wake up, and the girl wonders what kind of voice it is and whether it is Charles. However, he only climbs onto the bed and claims that the girl has not even woken up and asks if she is looking for His Majesty, or maybe she dreamed about him. At that very moment, knights rushed into the room, screaming, asking if Lady Armand was all right. However, the assassin replies that it is too late and that the life of this lady is dear to him. Then he advises retreat. At this time, there are also many mercenaries on the street, and one of the elders claims there is no end to them. Then he asks where they're all from, but another elder then asks where Miss Scarlet is. The woman replies that she is probably still sleeping in her bed. Hey. The man then asks why she doesn't protect her, Mark. Doesn't she know that the lady is helpless and cannot be left without protection? However, another elder then cries out for him to go and help her himself. Well, then the mercenary comes out with the young lady and claims that they should not draw their blades. After which he tells everyone to put their weapons on the ground and, no joke, because their commanders have already obeyed. The man then apologizes to Lady Armand, but asks what happened to Charles. And the commander replies that he left for Rochelle at dawn and will not return soon. The mercenary then asks what the guy is talking about, because he is disappointed, and the main character thinks that they are acting as if they are waiting for Charles, but then the girl thinks if this is one of the assassins they saw yesterday, after which she asks what they need and whether they really came to plunge her into eternal sleep. And the guy then asks what he will get from that which will plunge the noble lady into eternal sleep, and after which he claims that this will not happen if she listens to him, and the main character thinks, is it really not for the sake of that which will plunge her into eternal sleep? The assassin then claims that she might get a little hurt, but overall everything will be fine, and the girl understands that because she was attacked unexpectedly, she didn't have time to take anything with her. And she only has a magical object with her that transmits information, so now the young lady breaks it and realizes that she never thought she would use it like this. After this, a bird flies to Isar. She also flies near the place where His Majesty is, and he looks at this bird in surprise. The blonde then turns to the emperor and asks what's wrong with him, but the man merely tells Count Lumen to check the garden. The boy then asks why the emperor suddenly replies that he senses familiar magic. The young lady merely screams. The assassin then apologizes and asks if she is hurt, after which he states that it is cold outside, so they will wait there. The guy also turns to another assassin and claims that he would tell the guys to take all the money they can find in karate, to which he agrees. One of the elders then asks if the miss is okay, and the girl replies that she seems to be. The woman then turns to the young lady and tells her not to lose her activity because they don't look like ordinary bandits, especially their leader. The main character, when she looks at this man, wonders who the hell he is. After which the girl also turns to the elders and asks if they know about the assassins. The man then asks how the young lady knows about them, and the girl replies that His Majesty told her yesterday and that their fighting style is similar to the Pan assassins. The man is a little surprised after this and says that this can't be true. These assassins aren't that famous, and their family disappeared many years ago, along with the head of the Armans, whose traditions were not recognized. Those who know which traditions Armin destroyed, and now the man asks if they could be Arman's subordinates. The assassin leader then says it's impressive, and the old man quickly notices. After which the red-haired young man claims that sometimes it is better to pretend that he does not know. Then the guy lifts the old man by the collar and says, just like now. The young man also says to take the lady somewhere else, and one of them says he understands. The main character then asks what they are doing, since Mr. Brian has nothing to do with it. The young man with red hair replies that yes, and he has nothing to do with it, so his immersion into eternal sleep will not affect anything, and the main character understands that he meant that he does not care about Sir Brian, so why not immerse him in eternal sleep? Then the girl screams for them to stop immediately because they need her, and she will give them what they need, but let them not touch others. The guy then asks what she's talking about, and the girl replies that if they want, they can put her into eternal sleep right now. Scarlet also thinks they want her life. Well, she also thinks that, whatever the reason, they need her alive. However, if she's wrong, she'll be in big trouble, and the red-haired boy just looks at her, and the girl understands that this would be a rejection of the Duke's request. The blonde then claims that she immediately realized that she was their target, after which she understands that now she needs to somehow distract this guy. Scarlet claims that it was obviously their goal to attack her while His Majesty was away, but then the young lady asks what they will do with her without him. However, at that very moment, someone cries out, "Is it really His Majesty?" And the main character understands that she needs to act now. The girl cuts the thread with the remains of the bird and immediately bursts in. The red-haired boy then screams out what they are doing and tells them to grab the girl, but the young lady then only pulls out her sword, and he puts it to his throat. When the young lady looks at the red-haired boy, she asks what kind of expression he has on his face, and he looks like he's never been in such a situation before. The assassin leader then says that enough jokes, and it's inappropriate for a well-bred young lady to handle a blade. And the girl then asks if this means he doesn't like the situation. The girl also understands that there is only one way to resolve this, and she only hopes that Charles is not late. After which the young lady says that she will see idiots in the next world. But then someone stops her. The young lady turns around and wonders if it is His Majesty. The girl then turns to him and says that he returned so quickly, and the guy only asserts that they will talk later. After all, he'll deal with the assassins first. After which the emperor also turns to Count Luman and tells him to take the young lady, to which the young man agrees. The blonde then offers Lady Armand leave, but the young lady tells him to wait a minute. The girl then watches as the cameraman takes out a worn-out ball and tells them not to worry. His Majesty also tells the lady to close her eyes and not look or listen, because it depends on how they will look. There won't be anything funny. In an instant, it was all over, and although a little earlier than expected, they quickly moved on. The girl also thinks about Lord Benzer, who was unable to protect her, and thinks that fortunately, after her many persistent persuasions, he escaped cruel punishment. Instead, after the trip ends, he'll head to the reclaimed territory near the border, and in the process, not only the knights, but she herself has become close to the Tyrant's lieutenants. Meanwhile, the blonde asks how Lady Armand did it, considering she so easily persuaded His Majesty, and the girl is delightful. Scarlet then asks if it was easy, after which she claims that it was very hard to follow him for 3 days and 3 nights. The commander of the knights then turns to Lady Armand and thanks her, after which he swears that he repays her for her kindness. The main character replies that she will remember and it will cost him dearly, after which the man replies, "Of course," and the blonde guy says the girl is very noble, unlike many others. The main character then thinks that these guys are simpler than they seem, because even if she speaks sarcastically and even if she behaves rudely, they smile. Count Luman, who constantly cries, is no longer a blonde poser, because he is complimented by a wet blonde squid. With his wet eyes, he's no different from the knight commander. After that, the boys continued talking about things she hadn't asked about, and the chatty knight commanders and the head of intelligence turned out to be pretty good guys. When they get out of the carriage, one of the guys hands the young lady a cape and says that it gets quite cold at night and she doesn't have a cape. The main character then thanks her, but then looks at the woman and realizes that she continued to look at her and behave strangely. This woman kept saying that she remembered the late Duke when she looked at her, and even Brian's muttering was annoying too. The Tyrant has also changed, and now he is addressing the young lady. He then asks how she's feeling. The girl replies that she's fine, and a little tired from the carriage ride, after which the young man suggests she go for a walk. The girl asks if he really wants to go for a walk with her, and the emperor replies that of course, since she's the only young lady here. Onona and the heroine then wonder if he really enjoys laughing at her, and yet he grows more playful with each passing day. Scarlet replies that it's not funny at all, but then thinks that after a bunch of events and twists, they are there. The young lady arrived at the problem area that the elders had spoken of, and this territory was Adrian's, namely the monster forest. The Armand family and their elders are the ones who determine their destiny. The girl brought the Tyrant there because she had ulterior motives, and if he found out about the elders' problems, then in the worst case, they would turn to him for help. Discussing matters of the magical forest with Duke Armand is no easy task, and as usual, there's no clear answer. At this time, the emperor senses something and claims that it seems they are close. The man also asks what's going on and how the Armands defended the perimeter. The woman remains silent after this, then declares that she will tell His Majesty everything from the very beginning. When they tell the story, they say that they have no excuse and sincerely ask for forgiveness. The emperor then says that, okay, he didn't believe in them from the very beginning, and the girl then turns to His Majesty and suggests that he first go into the forest. One of the knights then asks if Lady Armand came there not to recuperate, and the young lady notes that this is true, but nevertheless, the forest is under the jurisdiction of the Armands, and she is also there to see how things are going. But when the girl is about to enter the forest, the knight commander asks if the lady understands that this is a dangerous zone and that they can't just enter it. The young lady replies that, of course, and that they'll simply be near the border, and it is not necessary to see them off because they want to go alone with His Majesty. Well, then one of the elders turns to Lady Scarlet and asks if she has to enter the forest. The girl replies that she would like to personally verify everything and the reason why the forest is in such disarray, after which they say that the girl can do as she wishes. And the emperor then claims that, moreover, he himself had long been thinking about going there. After which he tells the knight that there is no need to worry about the lady's safety, because as long as he is next to him, nothing will happen, and if it comes down to it, he is the one who poses the main threat to the lady. After which the two of them head into the forest, and the guy answers yes, after which he suggests they head out. Then the young lady enters and thinks she should take a look, because if she turns left from the entrance, they'll stumble upon a dead tree. And the emperor then turns to the lady and asks if she has really been there. The girl then replies that no, and even the elders cannot enter there, and His Majesty asserts that for a person who is there for the first time, she leads him very confidently. The main character then realizes that she had been there in a dream, after which she only says that she simply really likes adventures and escapades, which is why she fearlessly rushed forward. But the guy then tells her not to go too far, because it is impossible to predict where a demon might appear from, and the girl then agrees, after which she walks a little further and realizes that they are there. The young lady then turns to His Majesty and tells him to look at it, but the guy only claims that he asked her not to go far from him. But then he looks at the young lady and is a little surprised. Scarlet only tells him to hurry up and come to her, and the guy understands that this is the place where the lady stumbled upon, and it was strewn with ancient golden flowers that, according to legend, attracted demons. A short time later, the knights examine the flower and say it's so rare. Another knight replies that it's not exactly rare, as this plant is known to the world as existing only in legends, and that's exactly what he thought. Well, then he turns to Lady Armand and asks where she got this from. The guy mentions a slime in the young lady's hands. Scarlet simply asks if he's talking about this spirit, then asks if he's really cute. After all, she found him in the forest and decided to keep him as a pet. The blonde-haired youth insists it's not a spirit, but a slime. Geppetto is known as a demon-devouring predator. The young woman realizes the intelligence chief possessed knowledge of ancient plants and creatures. The main character then turns to the emperor, and the guy claims that even if it is harmless to humans, it cannot be kept, and the purpose of the Saim is to scare away demons in the forest. The protagonist understands that the same applies to the Tyrant, who was also wise. Initially, everyone was slightly overwhelmed by the honest attempts, but soon the ice was broken. Samples of all the flowers were taken, and the soil and mucus of Geppetto at the site were also analyzed. Naturally, as soon as preparations for the research were completed, everything would be burned, and it was decided that this research would be conducted jointly by Armand Gassis and Count Ruman. Therefore, the young lady thinks that there will be no problems and everything will be fine. And now the young lady is holding a crystal ball and asking if she can really accept it. After all, he needs it more, because they'll need to contact the lab one way or another to get the reports. But the elders then only bow and say that this is nothing compared to the kindness of the young lady. Adrian claims that this is true and the girl is their benefactor, so if she needs anything, let her know. After all, they'll do everything they can to help her. The main character then smiles and says that, in that case, let them promise her that they will take care of her friend and Nisara, and also protect them if they are in danger. The elders then look at each other and then agree and say that they will fulfill her request. They also swear by the names of Armand's vassals, after which the main character, with a smile, asserts that she relies on them. Thus, the mission was successful. And a little while later, the girl says goodbye to the elders and wishes them all the best, and also states that when the situation is resolved, she will come to visit in the spring. The girl understands that she will continue to maintain contact with the elders, and it seems the Duke will try to put her into eternal sleep, so she understands that it is good to have supporters. When the girl looks out the window, a blonde man suddenly approaches her and asks if she wants to sit down, because His Majesty would like to talk. The main character then does so and then asks what he wants to talk about. The guy replies that he wants to talk about the assassins who are targeting her. The girl then thinks about it and realizes that Charles and Count Ruman conducted an investigation into unknown individuals who had threatened her life throughout the trip, and one of those detained, after an unsuccessful escape attempt, confessed to several things under the pressure of Charles's threats. The continuation of the story, which Count Rumen voiced with careful choice of words, presented facts that made the blood run cold. And now the young lady understands that immediately upon her return, she will need to think about how to get rid of the Duke. And although the reason remains unclear, the Duke's actions have clearly already gone to hell. At this time, the blonde turns to Lady Armand and asks if she is okay, to which the girl replies yes, she understands that before this. She needs to check on the fairies. Isar is just watering the flowers and trees at this time. He thinks about Scarlet and realizes that this girl makes life difficult in many ways. So the young man also wonders when the hell she'll grow up and why she decided to grow fruit trees here. Damn, I bet she'd kiss him. What would I even do? He also thinks that since she's planted fruit trees everywhere, fairies will suddenly appear. Meanwhile, the main character realizes that, if her memory serves her correctly, now is the time when the Tyrant, following in the footsteps of the Dark Mages, will plunge the main character's boyfriend into eternal sleep. And the young lady thinks that maybe he has already tried to put him into eternal sleep. The blonde then turns to the Sir and asks when he plans to hold the next negotiations related to Rashakel, and the man replies that he has dealt with urgent matters, so it can be postponed. The main character then asks if some people haven't already been there, if we're talking about Rashakel, and the man then asks if the lady also knows something about him. The girl replies that no, and she only heard it briefly, but the blonde man insists that it's entirely possible, since the Rashakel are a closed and currently extinct family. The main character then asks if it's a family, and she claims she thought it was the name of the place. The blonde claims that in Carlier, this place is still called Rashakel, so he thinks that's why many citizens of the empire know this name, and of course, why a new kingdom has now been founded there. The young lady then realizes that unknown information about the three oldest families on the continent, Carlior, Rashakel, and Armon, is gradually beginning to leak out, and also about their founders and what the rumors say among them. Carlier, Charles's ancestor, was the god of winter winds, who had fallen into eternal slumber. The young lady then asks if the god has fallen into eternal slumber, and is told that this means he has become human. In particular, this god was the supreme god who possessed unimaginable power and allowed him to cross dimensions. The young lady then asks if Armand and Rashakel were also gods, and the guy replies that this is true, and the founders of these families were also gods who plunged into eternal sleep. The progenitor of the Armand family was the god of prophets and travelers, who had fallen into eternal sleep, and the Rashakel family was founded by the goddess Clover. The protagonist then asks if this is true, but that means the advisor bears the goddess's name. And the blonde man replies that the advisor's name is most likely his real one, and the young lady then asks what his real name is. And the guy replies that he is not sure and is not informed on this matter, but in general he suggests returning to the main conversation, after which he claims that among them, the first clan to bear fruit was Rashakel, and so thoroughly that approximately 20 years ago the territory of the feud was erased from the world map. The girl says that if we're talking about events that happened 20 years ago, then it must have happened around the time she was born. The boy replies that's true, but because little was known about that family. It is almost impossible to find those who inherited them, but on the other hand, the imposed witchcraft was so cruel that there were rumors that it was the work of a dark magician. The main character then thinks if there is really no way to figure out the successor of the Rashakel family, and the guy replies that he doesn't even know, and if we list the most common traits, then all family members had blonde hair and ruby-colored eyes. The young woman says this isn't information that will help in the search, and besides, even she has blonde hair and ruby-colored eyes. His Majesty is looking out the window at this time, but then suddenly the carriage stops. The Emperor then looks out and asks what happened, and the coachman then turns to His Majesty. He claims there's an unconscious man lying in the carriage's path. The main character also goes outside and asks if there's a problem with the carriage. But then, in shock, he asks why a small child is lying in such a place. After which, the young lady also approaches this baby and asks if he is okay and if he can breathe. The guy then turns to the young lady, a little surprised, and grabs her by the cape. He asks if there are any more survivors. The young lady then wonders what he's talking about, then turns to the boy and tells him to calm down first, asking where his parents are and what his name is. The guy then replies that his name is Glenn Mashiar, and then he still loses consciousness again. The emperor then approaches the young lady and states that this boy has grabbed hold of life, so there is no need to worry, because it looks like he lost consciousness from the fact that the tension has gone away, and the main character replies that it is clear. But then he thinks that this boy has blonde hair, ruby eyes, and also this name. And it was because of this boy that Shirla gnashed her teeth in anger in the original production, Glenn Mashiar's appearance on stage. In the original story, he was Shirla's former lover and met his end at the hands of the Tyrant. So it can be said that Shirla and the Tyrant's relationship began with the breakup of a previous relationship for the sake of revenge. The emperor, meanwhile, asserts that if this is about Mashiara, then, as far as he knows, it's a family that disappeared some time ago, meaning there are survivors. The main question then is whether the young man offered a hand in this family's downfall, and the emperor claims that they were destroyed by witchcraft, and the place looked the same as in the case of the Rashakel family. The blonde man addresses His Majesty and says that the disclosure of information about the fall of the Mashiar family is illegal. However, His Majesty interrupts the boy and says that this boy is no ordinary child. The main character then wonders what he is talking about, and the man claims that the Mashiar couple had only one son, and he suffered from an illness that prevented him from growing. And it is impossible for such a small child to be born into a family that has already plunged into eternal sleep. Therefore, in other words, he is clearly the successor of the Mashiar family, and this year he will turn 20, which means the girl is the same age as him. And this is the age when one can become the head of the family. After much deliberation, it was decided to leave the boy in the care of the elders, since the girl understands that where someone is trying to put her into eternal sleep, she will not be able to protect anyone. At this time, the Duke knocks on the table and asks where the girl hid the certificate of the head of the family. But despite the fact that he is the head of the family, he is not allowed to enter the castle of the owner of the feud without permission, and since he did not have the certificate in his hands, the previous Duke remained the owner of the castle. The man is now sure that the certificate is in the possession of the young woman, but he does not understand why he cannot find it. He could have intimidated her as a child, but that will not work now, since she is already 20 years old. And if this girl presents a testimony, then she has deep roots. The Armand family will choose this girl as their next head, which is the continuer of the lineage along the line of the legitimate son of the family. A little while later, the young lady is already stretching and realizes that she has finally returned home. Although several incidents delayed her a bit, the emperor turned to the young lady and told them to go inside, and the young lady then asked what he was talking about and whether the man hadn't planned to stop by the ducal residence before leaving. But the emperor insists he needs to give some orders to the knights, and as soon as he's done, he'll catch up with her. The girl then realizes it's even better this way, because who knows what she might do next. She should go first and check out the situation, after which the girl says that then she will go and check on her family, and the young lady also says that they can take their time. The emperor and the knight then exchange glances, and the blonde asks His Majesty if he really intends to establish surveillance on the ducal residence. After all, as he himself knows, the Armanovs are surrounded by a powerful magical barrier, and even if it is the most imperial house, he is not able to destroy the magic of ancient families, and in the end, the only way is to directly ask for help from family members. The emperor then replies that he knows and will settle the matter himself, and the guy will prepare the crystal ball as ordered. But the man also realizes his sword is resonating. Meanwhile, in the mansion, someone calls for everyone to go out into the lobby, as Mistress Scarlet has returned. And the main character at this time, with a smile on her face, says that she hasn't seen them all for a long time, after which she asks if everything was okay in her absence. Lucy then runs up to her mistress, and the girl asks how she's doing, what the maid has been doing while she was gone, and whether she's missed her. However, the woman then says that something else is more important right now. At that very moment, someone shouts for the servants to get out of the way. It turns out to be the Duke, and the butler is trying to calm him down and says that His Highness cannot behave like this and that all the guests outside are from the imperial house, so he must keep a straight face. But the man just bursts in and asks if the butler is going to let him go, and how dare he touch his body. The main character then wonders why the Duke is so impulsive, and the man just looks angrily at the young lady, after which she asks what she did. But the man just hits her in the face and then says that she is a useless idiot and screams if she knows what damage he suffered because of her, and it would be better if she went into this forest of monsters or something like that and never came back. Then the young lady's brother, also covered in bruises, runs down the stairs and asks what the hell has come over his father and what Scarlet has done. Then someone else comes into the room and says they're curious to know too. It turns out to be the Emperor, and when he approaches the Duke, he asks what he was thinking about when he intended to raise his hand against his bride right before his eyes. The Duke then becomes a little frightened and turns to His Majesty, trying to justify himself, but the man then asks, is this nothing more than disregard for the Emperor? And yet he does not remember leaving alive the one who tried to climb above his head. And yet the Duke, like a worm, had hidden well until now. A man, when he cries out to His Majesty that he's committed an act worthy of eternal slumber, after which he immediately bows to the floor. The main character then wonders if Charles is really angry because of her. After all, she tried in every possible way to annoy him for several days. But maybe he now hates her completely. The Duke at this time still addresses His Majesty and claims that he in no way tried to show disdain towards him. And after all, this is a succubus family matter, that is, how could he dare to touch His Majesty's bride? The Emperor then says that the Duke always sits within the four walls of his house, and it's time for him to do something. But Miss Scarlet must be tired, so this time he will turn a blind eye to what happened, because it will be too hard for her to prepare for the Duke's funeral right now. After which the man turns to the maid and tells her to take care of Miss Scarlet, and he will wait outside, but the maid agrees. After which she just looks furiously at the Duke and asks if the lady is okay. However, the main character then only laughs and understands that it seems the Duke was seriously scared. And in what a pitiful light he appeared before the servants whom he so ignored. So the young lady says how shameful. Lucy then turns to Mrs. Scarlet, who apologizes and suggests they get up. The young lady realizes that at this sight, the Armand family's servants are overcome with a strange feeling of delight. At this time, the maid turns to the mistress and tells her to turn her head properly in her direction, after which the young lady does so and realizes that at the same time there was anger in the air, especially among those who were close to Scarlet. The young lady also asks if the Duke's maid saw him, as he turned pale as if he were dead and was about to burst into tears. However, Lucy does not respond to this, and the girl understands that the Duke causing pain to Scarlet is a scene that angers Lucy every time she sees the girl, no matter how many times she has witnessed such an act. The young lady then says that she brought a gift for the maid from this trip, and the girl then asks if the gift is really for her, but the main character doesn't answer that it is, and she can't give it to her right now, but someday it could be a great help for her future. After which, the young lady also claims that she also bought some popular local desserts at her destination and suggests they try them together. The maid then replies that she doesn't even know what to say to that, but thanks the young lady. The main character then asks what she is thanking her for, and also understands that now Scarlet once again thought that she did the right thing by deciding to protect Lucy and Isar. And Lucy is for Scarlet, is the most precious friend in the world. A little while later, the young lady turns to His Majesty, and when she sees him on the street, she says that it is such a relief, because she was worried that he had already left. Scarlet also apologizes and says that she is a little late, and His Majesty just looks at her, then says that the girl has finally arrived and asks if her cheek is okay. Scarlet answers that this is not the case when you need to stay in bed. The boy replies that that's good, and then they'll move on to the next item on the schedule. The young lady then realizes that she'll need to keep the Duke under control for a while, and soon, in the safe zone, the time will come for the fairies to be born. So she's considering whether to take a short break for now. The girl says she'd like to take a month off but asks what he thinks about postponing everything until later. And the girl also claims that she took a whole week from him to travel this month, but it will be enough to get back into action. And that's exactly how he will restore his schedule. The young lady also thinks about Glenn Mashiar, and if Shirla's reason for taking revenge on the tyrant disappears, then the original plot will not begin at all, and the girl wonders if this is right. But she needs to think about this scenario too. But the emperor now asks if she says she will meet him in a month. The young lady wonders what that unhappy expression is on his face, after which the young man simply turns around and says, "Okay, then they'll see each other," to which the young lady replies, "Yes." But then she thinks what's wrong again, and also whether she made some kind of mistake. But she just can't understand what the problem is. Thus, in a bad mood, the tyrant left the ducal residence of the Armands. A little while later, the elder writes whether Miss Scarlet has recovered, and also writes that everything is fine with him and Brian, and the exploration of the monster forest is also progressing without a hitch. And they are also trying their best to get the boy she left in their care back on his feet, and if they are lucky, he might wake up soon. But as soon as he comes to, she will immediately inform the young lady about it. The woman also understands that the Mashiar family fell at the hands of the emperor, but it turns out that everything was not like that at all. But if there are many such false rumors circulating about the emperor, then perhaps there will be no need to so zealously oppose the engagement of their benefactress Scarlet. But as soon as this poor young man wakes up, they will be able to find the answer to this question. Meanwhile, Scarlet is in the garden, thinking that the trees have finally borne fruit. After a long time, the girl dedicated the safe zone to him and now claims that in her absence, it seems Isar has been tending it well. So now all that remains is to wait for the fairies to appear. Well, then the girl touches one of the fruits and asks what it is and whether the parasite has already started gnawing at her raft. Well, then the young lady suddenly sees a small creature and wonders if it is a fairy. You can just look at how tiny she is. She speaks and moves just like a doll. The baby then asks if the man is angry, and the young lady replies that she's nothing of the sort. Well, I also wonder if these are the same fairies that appeared in the original work, because in the novel it was said that they were servants of the devil and looked like a thin, hungry young man. So now the girl turns to the baby and asks if there are other fairies there besides him. The guy then just waves his hands and says that these are his friends, and the young lady understands that if we are talking about friends, then these are exactly the same fairies as he is, after which the young lady says that it is clear. After which he asks if he knows what a fairy stone is, but the fairy only asks if it is something edible, and the main character realizes that she screwed up, after which the kid says that she really is angry, and the girl replies that she is not. Well, she thinks that it's a curse and that she really got the place wrong or mixed up the time of the fairy's birth, but in this scenario, she simply threw money down the drain and ended up receiving nothing. After which the girl also turns to the fairy and asks if he is really very hungry. The young lady also understands that she cannot just ignore the fact that the baby is hungry. After which it sees other rivers and turns to them and tells them to go there too, because it will give them fruits. Then the young lady asks what their names are, but the fairies reply they don't know, and the young lady asks if that means they don't have names. Scarlet also realizes that these clearly aren't Shirla's fairies, because they definitely had names, and to ease her disappointment, maybe she should give these little ones names. After which the young lady turns to the baby in the blue cap and claims that he will be Tropka. The red one will be called Belle, and the golden one Brooke. The young lady also thinks that so be it, and she wonders if they're to blame for anything. Then she tells the kids not to fight, and that there's plenty of fruit there, so let them eat in peace, to which they agree. And the main character understands that even if she goes to the village without the stone, Fido will be able to feed herself by selling the property left by her mother. But when the girl looks into the box, she asks what kind of nonsense it is, since only crumbs remain of her mother's inheritance. Then she asks why she went out like this. She certainly spent money thriftily, but the sick note asks if Mrs. Frugal considers this a waste, and the girl just tells Lucy that this is very funny and claims that now, even if she ends up in the village, she will be a beggar. The girl understands that she completely relied on the fairies, but since everything turned out this way, she went in no matter what and had to find a way to earn money. After which, the young lady also went out onto the balcony and wondered why the room was so stuffy. But when a girl looks at the street, she also thinks that this woman is a duchess. Then the young lady turns to the maid and asks if the duchess has been away anywhere. The girl replies that she seems to have been at a meeting on the effective management of the guild, and apparently the discussion revolves around opening a new trade route. After all, Madame was an entrepreneur before becoming a duchess. The young lady then wonders how she could have forgotten this, after which she turns to Lucy and says that she will take her out for a while, and the maid asks where the mistress is going, and the young lady then confirms that she needs to greet the duchess. The girl understands that, frankly, if the engagement to the tyrant breaks off, her independent life will become a foregone conclusion. And after this, the question arises whether to live richly, squandering the remains of her property, or to drown in poverty. But the girl also understands that by placing all her hopes on the fairy stone, she completely squandered her mother's inheritance, and now she thinks about it and understands how stupid she acted. Well, at this point, with everything as it is, there's only one thing left to do. The Duchess, meanwhile, claims she was told the girl was looking for her. After which, the woman asks if she is really going to beg for money, and the young lady replies that she is not doing anything of the sort. He realizes she simply wants to learn how to earn her own living, after which he claims she needs advice from the Duchess. The woman then replies that she doesn't understand what she means, and she doesn't think that they are in such a relationship to share this kind of conversation, and the main character only asks if this is really the case and understands that, based on her relationship with Izar, at least in the sense that she has never taken such stupid steps as, for example, trying to put her into eternal sleep. She then came to the conclusion that the Duchess was a person with whom she could, to some extent, have a constructive dialogue. And then the young lady claims that she knows that the Duchess does not like her, but at the same time she is extremely competent and therefore does not try to put her into eternal sleep. Scarlet understands that she has never spoken to the woman in such an open manner, so it can be said that this is the first time she hinted that she knows her past, and now the girl says that if it concerns her, then she agrees with the woman that she cannot stand this family. So one day, she wants to break off relations with the Duke. The brunette then says it's a mistake for the young lady to discuss such matters with her, and Scarlet then asks if Mrs. Words mean she shouldn't reveal her true feelings. She's the only one who can give her such advice, and the woman then asks what the young lady wants. The girl understands that she cannot forever rely on her memories of the original plot, and she does not know the economy or social structure of the empire, and in general has no idea what fashion trends are currently popular among the nobility. In fact, there is a real world out there that she knows nothing about, and that cannot be fully explored simply by reading a novel. Therefore, now the girl claims that she wants to learn from her once again how to run a business, as well as the basic etiquette and knowledge that a nobleman should have. The woman claims that if a girl of her age needs an etiquette teacher, she'll introduce her to one. But the young lady insists she's not talking about simple etiquette rules, and it was about something like her noble dignity when she looks with disdain on petty behavior and encourages outright violence, after which the young lady asks if there is anything else that needs to be added. She says she wants to explore these kinds of practical aspects in general. She also hopes the woman will teach her how to survive alone in this world. Scarlet also states that of course she would like to know more about the introduction of trade affairs, and it is clear that the miss comes from the nobility and had strong family support behind her. But still, the young lady says that the reason she was able to simply maintain her position, even in such a tough family as Armand. The point is that she broke up and founded the trading guild, and is the mistress of her own life. The woman then replies that this is simply ridiculous, and if the girl understood what she wanted to learn, she would have already mastered everything herself. And I wouldn't engage in teasing others. And she thinks that there is no need to continue the conversation, so she will leave first. The main character then tells the woman to wait, and if she is angry because of her behavior, then let him reproach her with at least a word, because she can do such a small thing. And perhaps she won't believe her, but the girl considers her an outstanding person, and although their relationship leaves much to be desired, but if the woman respects her as a person and considers that these words have meaning, then she will listen to her in everything. Scarlet also claims that it would be great if Madame stopped being so prickly with her. After all, in reality, she is not the one on whom the woman wants to vent her anger, and this person is Duke Armand. The young lady then realizes that she knew her guesses were correct. And after all, a woman hates her husband to the depths of her soul. Things cannot be any other way. Because in pursuit of power, he married the wife of the previous duke and kept her as his concubine. Scarlet then says that if the woman helps her, she will definitely give the duke a full drink of water. The brunette then turns to the young lady, but he asks what she intends to do. The girl replies that the woman should watch carefully, because she will pay him off properly. Thus, her temporary alliance with the Duchess was concluded. A little while later, the maid asks if this means that the mistress went to the Duchess. The young lady replies that yes, and she calmly accepted her offer. Lucy then remarks that the lady has nerves of steel, but she also claims to have another question, and the young lady asks what it is. And the maid asks why the mistress suddenly decided to visit Gracioso. The girl then asks if she is asking about the reason for visiting the temple, and she claims she simply wants to show how devout she is. Recently, two forces within the empire clashed violently: the imperial family of Carlier and the Temple of Gracioso actually lasted until the previous reign. The owner of the empire was the temple, not the imperial family, but with the rise to power of Charles, who killed the entire imperial family and took the throne at a young age, power was divided in two. As soon as the young man ascended to the throne, he began threatening the temple that had insulted him with false prophecies. Since it was a corrupt group to begin with, he completely severed the money supply to prevent them from carrying out their dirty deeds behind the scenes. His actions were the only way to bring peace to the capital's security, but the way he solved problems effectively secured for him the sword of a tyrant. In general, if in such a situation she shows deep devotion to a temple that is an enemy of the imperial house, then wouldn't this put her, as the emperor's bride, in a difficult position? The maid looks at the box and asks if this isn't the necklace she was given for her 17th birthday, and if she doesn't want to tell him she's donating such a valuable item to the temple. The main character replies that she doesn't care, and that it has no value to her anyway. And the temple will obviously be pleased with her offering, because she heard that the nobles stopped all financial support and for worrying about the imperial palace, and the young lady asks if, in such a situation, they would not want to receive something profitable. Scarlet realizes that she doesn't like all this because it's about the temple, and breaking off an engagement isn't the best time to weigh what's good and what's bad, so the girl heads to the temple. One of the accomplices then says that let the light of grace dwell in the believers, after which he greets his sister. The main character then answers, Alleluia, and the maid thinks in her mind that the mistress should have said, Amen. At this time, the man tells the sister to go again. He will take her to the prayer room. But the girl replies that no, and let him take her not to the prayer room, and to the altar. The man then looks at the girl with a little surprise and asks if she really has come to share God's grace. The young lady thinks that one only has to look at this, and what did she say? After all, she said that they would really like her gift. The man then apologizes for not immediately recognizing her intentions and tells her to wait a bit, as he'll check the altar and return. The protagonist replies that they'll wait. The girl also understands that the altar is at the center of the temple, and we are talking about a multifunctional hall where the high priest preaches the word of God and also openly welcomes guests, and they perform various temple rituals. Donations from nobles also came there, and since there is open space in all directions, it is ideal for demonstrating your religious beliefs. And in this gesture are hidden words about who donated how much. At this time, someone tells the sister to pass quickly, and the young lady then realizes that the temple is visible as if in the palm of her hand. At this time, one of the priests approaches her, and Gracioso greets the lady at the temple. Scarlet understands that if she says the word money, she can easily meet the high priest. The man at this time claims that he heard that a girl came to the altar to make a donation, after which he puts his hand and asks the young lady to place it in the donation box for the temple in this box. Scarlet then realizes that he is completely empty, and asks if she can pray. However, the man only asks if it is worth skipping the prayer, and the young lady then asks what he is talking about. However, the high priest asks the girl if she thinks that this empty box needs prayer now. And the main character then understands that she only has to look at him, because the priest openly tells her to turn out her pockets. But then the young lady orders Lucy to open the box, and so obeys her mistress. The girl understands that since she has decided to make a donation, she must do it with her own hands. Then the girl states that she will make a donation for the prosperity of the temple. However, then the young lady sees something and is a little surprised. She realizes that this is a drawing of a black hyena. The maid then turns to her mistress and asks what's wrong. The girl merely replies that she suddenly remembered something. Well, then he thinks that this is all a bit strange, and also that no one really sees this clearly drawn image. But even if they see it, they still won't understand what's what. After all, this is the new symbol of the dark magicians, and aptly named the constellation Ricos. Well, the girl wonders why the new mark of the dark magicians is depicted on the temple donation box. After which she looks at the priest, who only asks what is wrong with her sister and that she should not stand idle and rather make a donation. However, the main character tells him to wait and understands that everything there is just confused, but she refuses to get involved with dark sorcerers. The girl then turns to Lucy and tells her to take her things because they're returning to the carriage. The priest then doesn't understand what's going on, after which he turns to Lady Armand and asks how she can simply turn around and leave while standing in front of the altar. And the young lady claims that it is a pity that Grazioso does not take her wealth. And this is truly a sad matter. But what can one do if this is God's providence? After which the girl claims that she dares to leave them because she needs to hurry to a planned meeting. The young lady then runs off, and the priest asks where she's going, since she's supposed to share the glory with Grazioso. Meanwhile, one of the priests is also talking to Clover, and he asks if this isn't too much, because how can they even refuse to provide funds for humanitarian aid? The green-haired youth replies that there are no areas within the temple's jurisdiction requiring humanitarian aid, and that this is His Majesty's order. He has conveyed the order to him, so he is free to take his leave. Well, then one of the priests shouts at the advisor to wait. However, then the main character also shouts out why they're following her. And the man, hearing this voice, is a little surprised. After all, he understands that Lady Scarlet is there. At this point, the girl claims that this is extortion and robbery, after which she asks if he even understands what he is doing. But the man claims that she brought it to make a donation. Then someone turns to advisor Clover. The green-haired youth sees his colleagues there and asks if they're also busy with surveillance today. The speed-haired youth replies that it's an imperial order. Clover then says how timely they appeared because he wondered what was going on there and also whether something had happened to Lady Scarlet and why those individuals were following her. A second confidant of Charles claims that the girl went to the altar to make a donation, but suddenly decided to leave without noticing the mark. And as he himself can see, the high priest became furious, and some of the priests wanted to follow him. I don't even know what the matter was. The green-haired boy claims that even after they explained it, he still can't understand why the girl would even take such a step. Brand replies that he too is perplexed. The red-haired man claims that he really has no idea what Lady Armand is doing, and how those heavy-assed idiots defend the reputation of that bastard, even though they would immediately stick their heads in the sand if you pointed a ball at them. Clover, however, insists that he still thinks they should take action, so let them tell Lady Armand's coachman to drive up to the back entrance. And the young man with black hair agrees, after which he asks if Clover will report what happened to His Majesty. And the guy replies, "Of course," and the Emperor will be very pleased with this. The main character, meanwhile, realizes that this is the end of the world and the apocalypse, but the world she will have to live in from now on is terrifying. Therefore, the girl wonders how she can ignore something like this, because despite the fact that the temple was a villain, it was still far from the new group of dark magicians Drakkar from the constellation Ricos that appeared later. The temple is a corrupt religion that is completely rotten and represents evil itself. Well, every evil has different degrees, and now the girl understands that she is holding in her hands evidence that these two groups are in the same boat, and this is sheer madness. At this time, someone turns to the young lady and asks if she has returned yet. The main character then turns around and sees that it is her brother, after which she asks if he was at home, and the guy asks if he needed to go somewhere, but in any case, he says that it is good that he met the girl because he was heading to her room anyway. The girl asks what he is talking about, and the guy claims that she received a message from the Imperial Palace. The blonde is a little surprised after this and asks when it arrived, and there is still a lot of time until the next official event. The brunette then hands over the letter and claims that it was recently delivered, so let the girl keep it. Scarlet understands that after their breakup at the mansion, the Emperor acted as if he had no intention of contacting her, so the young lady wonders what came over him now. After which she reads the lines from the letter and asks what it is. The girl also wonders why the letter's tone has become so friendly. It even says he looks forward to their meeting. Scarlet realizes the Emperor's letter is imbued with sweet notes never before encountered, and goosebumps begin to run down her spine. The young lady wonders what the guy is saying, that he wants to see her before the planned official event, but she still doesn't understand why. At this time, Isar turns to his sister and asks what is written there, but the girl only answers that he should wait a little. After all, you first need to read the contents of the letter yourself. Well then, the girl also notices her mother and asks if she has returned. But the woman asks why the two of them are there at such an hour. The guy replies that he needed to pass something on to Scarlet, and the main character understands that the Duchess is apparently extremely surprised that they communicate more closely than she thought, but there is nothing strange about this, because even in the eyes of others, Scarlet and Isar have become too close too quickly. And the girl thinks that maybe it's worth tickling the Duchess's nerves a little, after which she takes the guy by the hand. And he says that apparently the Duchess had a lot of work that she returned so late. But they greeted each other, so they will leave first, because he and his brother need to discuss something alone. After which the young lady tells Isar to go with her, and the woman in response is only surprised and asks what this means. A little while later, the boy asks the young lady if this is truly a message sent by the Emperor. The girl replies that it is, and Isar claims he doesn't know what has happened in his heart, but shouldn't the girl, as his fiancée, be pleased by it? However, he still asks why she is in such a depressed mood. Well, the young lady replies that it is none of his business. The girl understands that Charles must have heard about the commotion she caused in the temple, but for some reason, instead of being ashamed of her, he became more friendly. And the young lady thinks she completely misunderstands the Tyrant's thinking. She never expected their meeting to take place so soon, so she's wondering what she should do this time. And the guy claims that, in any case, the style in which this letter is written does not at all match the guy's face, and the young lady asks what he's talking about. Isar insists it's as sharp as a bone-chilling wind, and he asks if this is really his sister's type. The girl then just grabs the young man's latches, and he asks what came over her, but the young lady tells him not to move and to sit still. After which, he asks if it is from Isar's point of view. She is so beautiful. The guy is only a little surprised after this, and asks what kind of nonsense she is talking about. He then pushes the young lady away and tells the ugly woman to move away. Scarlet then asks what's wrong with him, and if he's sick. But the girl also says that's not the issue. After all, he himself knows very well that she is not particularly modest, and often makes rash decisions. Well, she also hands the guy a letter and tells him to look at it. After all, why is His Majesty still so affectionate with her after all her similar actions? But, as expected, now she cannot help but admit that it is all about this magnificent appearance, but it cannot spoil such a perfect face. So the young lady asks what she should do, and the guy just remains silent, and then he leaves the room, claiming he thinks he should leave her. Scarlet asks if he's leaving already, but insists it's not even 8 o'clock yet. The young man then tells her to give up these imaginings and go to bed early. And the main character realizes that, of course, there's a high probability that this isn't true, but has she really managed to catch the Tyrant in her net? But if the guy really doesn't want to break off the engagement because of her beauty, what does it mean now that only her face remains? Hey, the girl understands what she needs: to shatter all the Emperor's illusions about her. Time passed, and the day of the appointed meeting arrived. A short time later, the girl announced that she planned to meet His Majesty at the Imperial Palace for dinner that day, and believed they understood how important this day was for the woman who was his fiancée. So the main character tells the maids to get ready quickly. Then the young lady notices the new maid and asks who she is, as she's seeing her for the first time. The red-haired girl claims to be Nancy and has been working at the mansion for about a year. Scarlet then apologizes and says that, anyway, she's asking them to make her look as pretty as possible today. Lucy replies that they'll do their best, and the young lady says she won't have to try too hard since she's naturally beautiful. Of course, then she replies that she'll do her best. The main character understands that she should strive for a more dramatic effect whenever possible, and if she initially appears in all her glory and then ruins it, his illusions about her will be shattered. The maid turns to her mistress and asks what dress she'll wear, but the girl replies she doesn't even know, and maybe the blue ones they bought last time. But Lucy asks if they weren't predicting hot weather today. Well, the main character asks what's wrong with Togo since she's not really planning on moving today, and the maid insists that wearing a dress made of thick fabric in such weather is clearly too much. The lady with red hair then turns to Mrs. Scarlet, after which she hands her the dress and asks how she likes this option. The young lady then examines the dress, and the maid claims that she tried to alter the dress that she had just told her to throw away. And it seemed to her that it would suit the lady if she added a little gloss. And of course, she's nowhere near the level of a tailor's work, but she can make some minor adjustments. The main character then asks if the maid told her her name was Nancy, after which she grabs her hands and claims that she really likes this dress. And she had no idea that there was a maid nearby with such a sharp eye as hers. The girl also says that next time he invites her to go shopping with her and asks if the girl doesn't mind. The lady with red hair then looks at Lucy, and she only sighs, after which the maid agrees. The main character replies that this is excellent and then asks her to put this beauty on her. The young lady realized that Charles's imperial palace, to which she had been invited, was so grand and beautiful that it resembled an entire city. The large square in the center of the palace seemed straight out of a famous painting. To the five-colored fountain, beautiful as a lake and dye. Now the young lady is standing in the garden. Meanwhile, the emperor approaches her and says he's a little late this time. Then he asks if she's tired from waiting so long. The girl replies that she's not at all tired, and that she was looking around the garden, so she didn't notice the time pass at all. Then she asks if he's finished with everything he's supposed to do for the day. The guy replies that he is, after which the young lady, with a smile on her face, asks what he plans to do now. The young lady is also wondering what that smell is. The air smells of iron. The man asks how long she intends to stand there, lost in thought, and then tells her to go there as he's asked the pastry chef to make her the best desserts. The guy also extends his hand and tells her to come quickly, to which the girl agrees, and she gives him her hand, but then she wonders if it was just her imagination, because it's entirely possible, and she hasn't even really slept lately. But then the young lady smells that smell again and realizes that she is sure that it is not the smell of iron, but something else. After which, the young lady turns to His Majesty and asks if he's hurt. The young man asks what she's talking about, and the young lady simply affirms that she is. The scent of red liquid wafts from him. The young lady realizes that 4 top-notch assassins snuck into the room while the emperor was sleeping, and it only took a few seconds for the boys to plunge them into eternal sleep without even a peep. Well, he wondered why it had to happen today. After all, today was the day he was supposed to meet that interesting girl, and he had to deal with the assassins from Pan. And this was a terrible place, where even the most sordid of pine trees were used, and now the result of this place's collaboration with the temple was unfolding before him. The boy also thinks it's a bit cruel, and understands that this is something he couldn't avoid, no matter how hard he tried. It's a spell cast using divine power. At this time, the young lady turns to him and asks if he will say anything, because there is a clear smell of red liquid. But the guy then asks what's wrong. The main character immediately turns to him and tells him to let her see where exactly he got hurt. After which the girl also asks if he is really there wounded, because he made an appointment with her, And what about the doctor? Because if he hasn't been to him yet, then she herself will tell him about his wound. The emperor then asks if the young lady is really worried about him now. He also asks if there could be anything else going on right now. Besides worry, the girl understands that she wants to break off the engagement, but she never wished Charles to be immersed in eternity, which is why she now asks how the hell he got so hurt that the smell is so strong. The young man claims that it was not his red liquid, but that he saw the girl raise such a fuss. He regretted that this red liquid was not his. The girl then claims that he should have said so right away, since she was only worrying for nothing. Without realizing it, the young lady was growing closer to His Majesty each time. The man then asks Miss Scarlet where she's going, and the girl replies that he doesn't have to follow her, as she's perfectly fine. But then, when the emperor spoke about desserts, the girl quickly sat down at the table, and now she just sees the guy staring at her, and then asking if she would like to ask what exactly happened. After which, the girl asks if it is necessary to do this. Well, the emperor only claims that early this morning, the assassins from Pan tried to put him into eternal sleep, and there were 4 of them, so this is clearly more than usual. The young lady then says that's how it is, claiming that he has a hard time with such a high position. But the main character, seeing his gaze, wonders what's wrong again, and whether she's made some kind of mistake. Therefore, the girl says that, nevertheless, the fact that we are talking about assassins from Pan makes one a little worried. After all, when she encountered them last time, she was very scared, although they were clearly far from His Majesty. The young lady also says that she thinks it's time for her to finish eating, and the man replies that she can eat more. Well, the girl claims that she is full and thinks that in such an awkward situation, she won't be able to eat another bite. His Majesty at this time turns to the young lady and says that she said today that she needed to show him something. The girl replies that yes, that's right, because she's going to show her something. The young lady also thinks she should get ready because she forgot everything because of that smell of red liquid. But in any case, everything turned out for the best because recently he continues to sit with a sour expression, and now she will destroy his illusions and at the same time make it so that he gets a little distracted from his heavy thoughts. So now the young lady turns to His Majesty, and he asks him to watch carefully. The girl understands that this is about something she has been working on day and night for the past 3 days. After which, the girl brings her hands to her mouth and shows the monkey's face. After which, he also shows the pig. The man then simply asks what Miss Scarlet is doing now. The young lady then realizes she's more embarrassed than she thought, and claims the emperor looked like he was in a bad mood. That same evening, the comrade only laughs and asks if he is serious, as every time he sees Miss Armand, he never ceases to be surprised. What was she even thinking? Doing something like that in front of His Majesty? The brunette then tells the guy to stop laughing, because the girl is His Majesty's fiancée after all. And then the guy asks what he's talking about, and it seems to her that the other guy also found it funny. But then His Majesty comes into the room, and the guys ask him how the meeting went. The emperor only states that a purge of Pan will be carried out. And the young man with red hair says that, finally, His Majesty has made the right decision. The brunette then asks if this is too sudden, since hadn't he turned a blind eye to their ruthless actions until now? And as we know, Pan is just a group of assassins. But didn't His Majesty himself order them to respect their merits and traditions that date back to the founding of the empire? The emperor then replies that he doesn't care, so let them prepare troops for immediate departure. The brunette then replies that he'll obey and then ask the advisor to adjust His Majesty's schedule. But the boy replies that he won't go, and the guy then asks if His Majesty will stay in the capital. The red-haired boy then replies that he understands what the emperor means, so he shouldn't worry because they will figure everything out themselves. And His Majesty then claims that he entrusts this matter to them, after which the guys respond that they will quickly clean them up. Well, the brunette then asks what his colleague is doing, and the young man with red hair asks if he has no eyes at all, because it's immediately clear what's what. The emperor said to destroy Pan, and that he himself did not go on a campaign so as not to stain his hands with the red liquid. This is all being done because of this month. And eventually, His Majesty will still have to intervene, but for now he suggests leaving him alone. At this time, the emperor remembers the faces the young lady made. And he smiles, and one of the advisors claims that this is the first time he has seen the emperor having such fun. The young lady only understands that, although it was her idea, she really didn't think she would make such awkward faces. However, Charles seemed to be very shocked and did not say a word for the rest of the meeting.